The Elemental Wizard of Hogwarts Chapter 1-20. Chapter 1 _ The beginning of everything. In the middle of the night, thunder raged, and heavy rain kept hitting the road. Master, that's right, just stop at the gate of the community. A slightly fat boy in the taxi directed the driver with an excited expression. Young man, it's raining so hard, you've been on duty all day, or I'll take you to the stairs. The driver said to the hunched boy who was so tired that he didn't look back. No need for a master, I just happened to have the courier arrive. Go to the gate to get a courier and go back. It's not far anyway, the young man said to the driver with a smile on his face. Whenever he is kind to people, he is always willing to smile back in return. The night was like ink, and the tired body couldn't hide the excitement in the young man's eyes. I saw the young man took out a long box from the express cabinet. After opening the box with excitement and violence, the exquisite wooden box inside was revealed. The young man opened the box while facing the rain, and saw a 15-inch-old wand in the box. Hey, it's finally here. It's 15 inches long, made of serpentine poplar wood. The core of the stick is a titanium silver alloy metal rod. It increases the strength and has inscriptions. Damn, it really deserves to be a high-end version of my monthly salary. The young man fondled his new toy, as if it were real gold, and the pouring rain did not stop the young man's enthusiasm. Suddenly, the young man looked back and forth to look at the road he had traveled. After all, at the age of 25 or 6, even if he loved Harry Potter, people would still see his behavior as a middle school student, especially the uncles and aunts in his community. Fortunately, it was late at night, and no one was awake to see the young man sneaking around. This weather is really suitable. The young man raised his newly arrived wand and shouted in a low voice, Bone reappears. Boom! God seemed to cooperate with the young man, and a huge bolt of lightning struck the tip of the wand that the young man had just raised. The poor boy also fell in response. Damn, I've learned physics for nothing, but it seems that I have cast a spell that only happens once in my life. Ha 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 ha, I'm finally not a muggle. Consciousness is getting heavier and heavier. This is the last consciousness of a poor senior HMI before his death. In the UK, on the same thunderstorm night, a couple was in the house. The wife was crying with her husband in her arms, holding a report in her hand. No, William, no, this is not true, God will not do this to me. It's all right, Lisa, it's not a big deal, we can adopt a child, it's not your fault, really. The man tried his best to comfort the woman, and the wood in the fireplace in the living room was crackling, but this warm scene didn't seem to warm the woman's inner despair in the slightest. Lisa is a police officer in the Scottish factory. She is brave and good at fighting many strange cases, but also because of an accident, a bullet wounded the lower left abdomen. Although she tried her best to rescue her, she still left some root causes. It was William who was holding him right now. Seriously, William might have known what the operation meant from the beginning, but he still fell in love with this heroic policewoman like a moth to the flame. It's all right, Lisa. I love you no matter what. William hugged Lisa and comforted him constantly. After all, as a well-known gentleman, these little problems really couldn't match his love for his wife. Bang! A thunderstorm sounded. God, this thunder is endless. Lisa, don't be sad. We can adopt a child. Believe me, we will treat him like our own child. In fact, it is not. What's the difference, isn't it? The man gently wiped the tears from the corners of his wife's eyes and said to his wife gently. Boom! A loud bang resounded through the sky, and the powerful flash even covered the lights in the room. The two people in the room instantly became silent, and the sad wife stopped crying, as if she was scared and stupid. Damn it, I've never seen a thunderstorm like this, it's like it's hitting our heads. William complained softly, and the wife in his arms seemed to sense something. Be quiet, William, I think I heard the cry of the child. It's impossible, no one will take a child out in this damn weather, William said with certainty, as if he was sure. Wait, damn it, I heard that too. William, who had just refuted his wife, suddenly looked at his wife in disbelief. The husband and wife carefully followed the cry, and when they opened the door, they found a child crying at the gate. Oh, poor child. Lisa held up the crying child with a motherly love on her face. Who is so unscrupulous to leave such a small child here in this weather? What an irresponsible parent. Wait, William, let's adopt this child. Lisa looked at the person beside her expectantly. Husband. It's not good. Lisa, you are a policeman. I think you should investigate it. At least you can't just keep it at home like this. At least you have to give the child a normal procedure. I hope he can grow up healthy. William's face said to Lisa with a smile. How amazing. They just received a report from the hospital today, indicating that they may never have children in their entire lives, and God gave them a little angel at night. Charles, Lisa said to William, I'll call him Charles, a boy William. Nice name, isn't it? William smiled as he looked at his wife in his arms, and his wife looked silly at their child. Well, Lisa, I think we need to go in. It's too cold outside. We need to get some warm blankets for the kid, and also, that stick in his hand. I think maybe we should save it. After all, it's the only thing this kid brought. Maybe, when he gets a little older, we're telling him. Before that, I think we'll have to put away that stick, because it's a little too dangerous for a kid to hold these. William said over and over again, and walked to the house with his wife in his arms. During this period, he did not forget to grab the wooden stick from Ciel's hand, and he was still making faces at the little seal in his wife's arms, trying to make fun of him. After all, for a couple with no hope of giving birth, Ciel is like a gift from God. The couple do not recommend giving all their love to this cute little guy. When the husband and wife were celebrating their happy child at home, in a towering castle in the Scottish Highlands, a quill suddenly flew up without wind and wrote the name of Shire in a book. Name. Oh, another lovely little wizard is born, isn't it wonderful, McGonagall? An old man with a beard long enough to braid said with a smile to the serious-looking lady who had just entered the office. Yes, Albus, even though he won't be in school until 11 years later. I think if you are free, I hope you can help me prepare this year's Little Wizards admission letter or take care of your students, and not here to watch the school record the roster of freshmen. Honestly, that doesn't quite fit your bearded principal's reputation. The lady named McGonagall stared at the old man with a serious face, suppressing her inner anger and glaring at the old man. God, Dumbledore, even if you're the headmaster, I beg you to write some letters for me, or go pick up freshmen, okay? I even sent Professor Snape here, and the staff is very tight, please. Reminds me of the principal's duties as soon as possible, even if it is to help pick up freshmen. Dumbledore's smile suddenly froze on his face, and he blinked a little embarrassedly, even though he was the headmaster, but when the freshmen were busy taking off, the whole of Hogwarts was the lion of this serious lion house. King's World. Okay, Minerva, let me see. I'd better go pick up the new students. Don't be so serious. After all, the darkness is also temporarily away from us, isn't it? The old man smiled and picked up his wand and walked out. It could be seen that he was in a really good mood. Yes, Albus, I think we all need help until poor little Harry starts school, and I think you will join us in welcoming new students for the next 11 years. Muggle-born wizards are becoming more and more popular. Which is good. Now you don't have to do anything else, just take on the responsibilities of the principal, and it can also make us less hard. Professor McGonagall walked to the place where the freshman catalog was written without looking back, waved his wand and directed the quill to write down letters. Okay, my esteemed vice principal. Dumbledore made a rare joke, blinked his eyes cheerfully and continued to walk out. The happy time of the elderly is always short, isn't it? But looking at it, it's also very interesting for a little life to go from being stunned to being extremely excited, isn't it? Thinking of this, the old man named Dumbledore rarely quickened his pace. After all, the darkness is now far away, so you can relax a little and be satisfied. It's nice to have the old man's occasional mischief, isn't it? Chapter 2 _ After a long time, it is a mutant template. Charles, get out and eat. I swear you keep doing some dangerous experiments in the garage, and I'll drive you to the bureau in a police car. Come on, Mom, don't be angry. I'm doing chemical experiments, not bomb making. Charles said helplessly. As he spoke, he took off his gloves and goggles and opened the garage door. It has been 10 years since the Wills adopted Seal. For the first 4 years, Seal was in a daze. He was well taken care of by the Wills. After all, it was difficult for his undeveloped brain to do any complicated thinking. When Seal was 4 years old and almost 5 years old, he awakened the memory of the young man who was sent away by his lightning magic in his previous life, and the title of genius became a matter of course. Learning knowledge seems very boring. Of course, it wasn't all that good. When Charles found out that he was struck by a thunderbolt and returned to England 40 years ago, the corners of his mouth, who were full of all kinds of money-making tricks, were almost at the bottom of his ears. After the series of coquetry and cuteness, his father, yes, the very gentle Dr. William agreed to his request, buying stocks of designated companies for him every year on his birthday. After learning about this, Seal was full of thoughts about the situation where he would have no worries about food and clothing in the future, and could lie on the yacht to bask in the sun, which was why Seal felt that he had awakened some strange attributes. In the last life, Seal had toiled and worked hard to survive. In his short life, he had lived a normal life and followed the rules. Now, a thunderbolt has allowed Seal to say goodbye to his fate as a laborer. Some strange ideas of Seal have sprung up like mushrooms after a rain. In the last life, Seal was actually a man who really liked to do something, but suffered from no funds and no space. But in this life, because of Seal's early operations, Seal was sure that he could realize his finances ahead of schedule in the next few decades. Free. So he requisitioned the garage with Mr. William and always comes out with some weird stuff. On the surface, Mr. William looks gentle and gentlemanly, but in fact, he is still very troublesome, especially after Charles requisitioned the garage to make some strange small objects and some experiments that are comparable to nuclear weapons in Mrs. Williams' opinion. Mr. William also joined it with great interest, and occasionally even pointed out many operational mistakes for Shire. Of course, after Charles and William blasted the ant nest in their backyard to a height of 5 meters, and Mrs. William drove the police car to the door of the house, this kind of happy thing was left to Charles alone with this privilege. Of course, it's not just being naughty. During this period, Seal also made a lot of fun things, such as a small colorful gilded dagger, which was given to this policewoman with a strong sense of justice as a gift on Mrs. Williams' birthday. If nothing else, this knife is now framed and hanging in Mrs. Williams' office, and everyone is bragging about how beautiful the knife that her genius son made for her is. He said it was dangerous, but he still liked his son's intelligence and hands-on ability. However, Happy Shire never thought that he would encounter setbacks before his rich life began. The cause of the incident was also due to an accident. There is no shortage of creatures like human traffickers that kill thousands of knives in this world. As a well-known good-looking young man, Seal is naturally targeted by human traffickers. Smart, she doesn't need makeup to play the elves in the movie, except for her black hair, which is a bit deductible. It is definitely the most perfect high-priced item. But how did they know that Seal's soul was an adult boy from the other side of the earth? After the lure was fruitless and even was tricked by Seal, when he was about to use force, Seal felt as if something was about to move in his body, so after Charles raised his hand in an alley and inadvertently fired a 100,000 volt, he fell into deep self-doubt as he watched the fainted trafficker duo. Is it not my destiny to live as a degenerate and rich man like a salted fish, and watch Professor Charles's rich man save his family, or Magneto to rule the world? Charles touched his chin and felt as if he was possessed by a yellow-skinned rat, or was he originally a yellow-skinned mouse mutated into a human shape? Shaking his head, forget it, there must be a road in front of the lane. Whether it's a mutant or a Pokemon, as long as it's not a miserable worker, it will be very long-lived. Seal shrugged, spread his hands, and ran out happily. I called my mother anonymously and added another sum to my mother's KPI this year. Time turned back to the present, and under the urging of his mother, Charles reluctantly sat on the table. Dear Ms. Lisa, I think you have a big misunderstanding of my experiment. Believe me, the last time you and your father exploded the backyard was purely accidental. You can't make a mistake and think your child is a bomb maniac all the time. Quote. Charles, darling, can you explain how I found you sneakily trying to experiment with the power of dust explosions in sealed boxes when I was off work a year ago before I even got into the garage? Mrs. Williams smiled. Looking at Seal, he spoke in an extremely gentle tone. Of course, if he cast any dangerous gaze, Seal would still be happy to answer his mother's question. Well, I'll be more restrained. But Mom, can you cross out the sugar from my no-contact list? After all, it's really troublesome to have an adult present every time you want to add sugar to milk. Charles looked at Madame William cautiously, trying to sneak through the border. What do you think, Mr. Charles Lancaster? Mrs. William was still smiling at our little Charles. Dangerous. Ciel's hair is standing upright. In this state, Mrs. William is absolutely not to be messed with. The absolute overlord of the family, even if her father is present, she will never dare to make a sound. Ciel was so frightened that he quickly lowered his head and started to deal with his lunch seriously. Eat slowly, don't worry, your father said that he would bring his colleagues and his family over at noon, and then we would go to the amusement park together. Oh right, their family is a girl. I heard that she is very beautiful. Shire, you have to seize the opportunity your father created for you. Mrs. Williams suddenly remembered something mysterious and said to her bare child. Come on again. The corners of Ciel's mouth twitched. Because of his well-known elf appearance, Ciel is really like the mascot of the neighbors. Even his mother, Mrs. William, likes to be random from time to time. Watching Ciel look innocent among the little girls, this is also one of the few hobbies of Mrs. William. But for Ciel, when he was in his 20s in the previous life, he was not interested in watching a group of little lowly. Compared with this group of little lowly, Ciel preferred to make a cameo appearance on Momonosuke. Thinking of this, Charles laughed out loud. Chapter 3_well, now it's the mage template. You'll never believe what Shire was like when he saw the brown stuffed ball with Emma Watson's face on his face suddenly. Well, from Europa Universalis to Rise of the Mutants, it's now sure that it's long live the master. Charles was madly complaining in his heart. However, to outsiders, Ciel seemed to be impressed by the beauty of the brown stuffed ball, staring at little Hermione stupidly. Of course you ignored the twisted expression and the corners of his mouth twitching from time to time. Charles, do you know Hermione? William couldn't help asking when he looked at Charles's awkward look. No, Dad, I'm just a little familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere, but I don't remember it. Charles immediately turned his eyes away and tried to pass the level, covering up the rude behavior just now. Really, but I don't remember at all. Hello, my name is Hermione Jane Granger. This is my father Walloway Granger, and my mother Avril Granger. I listen, Mr. Williams said that you have finished your high school courses by yourself. Maybe we can study together when we have time. God, you don't know, I always thought that the teacher taught very simple in school, but I still reviewed it very seriously. After all, I wanted to. It's hard to get a full score, isn't it? Hermione didn't look embarrassed when they met for the first time. Instead, she kept introducing herself to Ciel in a down-to-earth manner, and the rapidity of speech caught Ciel a little off guard. In fact, when Hermione finished introducing her name, Ciel wanted to cry and complained. He thought that he might have to wait a long time to watch his favorite movie, The Harry Potter 7 Parts, and it was boring. Ciel would make a series of silly and naughty actions. After all, in the age of lack of spirit, Ciel always wanted to have some fun for himself. But when Hermione appeared in front of Ciel, Ciel actually wanted to cry, as if he saw a fan of his idol. He actually came to his favorite story. How could this make Ciel not excited? Of course, about the series of canons behind Hermione also made Ciel feel the embarrassment when Ron first met Hermione. Thinking of this, Ciel suddenly realized why Hermione was so eager to introduce herself, even a bit of a barrage. Hi Hermione, I'm Charles Lancaster, and I think I'd love to study together in your free time, and I have a feeling we're going to be friends for life. Ciel looked at Hermione's serious answer. Dad, and Mr. Granger, please don't look at me like that. I believe that my friendship with Hermione is definitely a continuation of the friendship between the two of you. After all, I'm fine at home, but I've heard enough of it. Dad, how do you complain about you? Lifelong friend Mr. Granger. You were still very happy when you were in college, weren't you? Charles replied innocently, looking at Mr. Granger with a naive face. After speaking, he did not forget to pat the confused little Hermione, and held her hand to keep her away from this battlefield. What? Damn it, William, how did you slander me in front of the children? I'm still serious about keeping your scandal a secret for you. Mr. Granger tugged at William's collar excitedly, as if down in 1 second, the two of them were about to perform a full martial arts show. Charles. Hermione tugged at Charles's sleeve nervously. Should we go and tell the mothers that my dad and Mr. William seem to be going to do something unfriendly? Charles waved his hand in vain. It's all right, the boys are joking, don't mind them. Of course, my dad may have to treat Mr. Granger to a drink. It's not a big deal. By the way, I'll take you to visit my handicraft workshop. After that, he took Xiao Mao Tuan's hand and started to show her around his house. Of course, he made troublesome props. In the small garage, Hermione was also amazed when she saw it, and kept asking about some of the knowledge involved. Okay, gentlemen, it's rare for the two of us to have a vacation together, and I don't think you and the kids want to stay at home for this rare vacation, do you? William, I swear, you're continuing with Glenn if Mr. J is playing on the grass. Mrs. Granger and I will definitely choose to leave the two of you and take the children out to play. Mrs. William packed up everything and walked out of the house in a hurry. Mr. William said. Okay, Lisa, I'll come now. By the way, Shire, stop playing, take Hermione out, we're going to the amusement park. Mr. William and Mr. Granger stood together well, pretending to be an older successful man. He formally shouted to the two little ones watching the fun in the room. Come on, Dad. Seeing that there was no fun to watch, Seal took Hermione out of the house, and helped his parents get some necessities, and then the six of them drove to the amusement park in a mighty manner. Go. Time flashed like a white horse. It was night. The Shire family, who had been playing for a day, separated from the Granger family in the sunset. At this time, Shire had returned home and was lying in his cot, unable to sleep for a long time. Of course, the main reason is that during the dinner with the Granger family, Charles learned that the Grangers planned to move to London to continue their dental practice, and this time, the purpose of visiting Mr. William was not only a friend whom he had not seen for a long time to meet again, and to see how the environment of his own community that William has been blowing in front of him for a long time. Yes, they're going to move in and be neighbors, so that the two young gentlemen can continue their youthful friendship, and the dentist's office in London will definitely earn more than it used to be. Gosh, I'm not only in the Harry Potter stories, but now I'm a neighbor to Hermione. Every time he thinks of this place, Seal feels extremely lucky, but thinking about the later mad woman Bella, and the village-level terrorist two-hole socket man, Seal feels extremely headache. When I was watching the movie, the death of Sirius, the death of Dumbledore, and the awkward feeling when Hermione was carved into a mudblood by a knife came to my mind again. All kinds of magical creatures, as well as the legendary Grindelwald. Ciel's heart was hot, and he was very curious about the follow-up story of him and Dumbledore. After all, Fantastic Beasts 3 was still not released when he first crossed. So he was really curious about what happened next. Wait, there seems to be a thing called a pensieve. My God, if I can get the memory of old Deng 2 or his old friend, can I watch Fantastic Beasts 34,567 in advance? Slowly fell asleep while thinking about it. Chapter 4 _ Preparation and Notification. In August 1991, Seal lay leisurely on the reclining chair in his room, but there was always a cool breeze beside Seal in the hot summer. A small flame kept beating like a coin on the tip of Ciel's left finger. Since meeting Loli, whose name is written as Hermione and read as Little Brown Hairball a year ago, Seal began recall the 100,000 volts when he was young, and after confirming that he would definitely receive an admission letter, in the spirit of prudence, he began to deliberately exercise himself. After all, as a senior Ha fan, he still knows many spells. Of course, on a sunny afternoon, Seal shut himself in the room and shouted spells very much in the middle of the afternoon. After nothing happened, Seal gave up his plan to learn some magic in advance. Not Seal. I never thought that I would go to Diagon Alley alone to buy some textbooks earlier, but I thought of the scene of turning over to the alley next to the crowd of fish and dragons plus forgetting everything plus fainting and flying all over the sky. Seal decisively gave up the idea of learning magic in advance. But God always favors the protagonist. After learning the magic of the system in advance, it was hopeless. Instead, Seal began to insist on fitness and exercise every day. After entering the school, "If I can't let you go by magic, I will kill you with one punch." Charles never relaxed. Perhaps it was this spirit that touched the heavens. On the night of Seal's 11th birthday, Seal's birthday was June 1st, he had a dream in which Seal turned into a blue plasma slime. The sphere is surrounded by countless four-color light spots, which makes Seal feel very interesting. After playing for a while in his dream, Seal can miraculously feel that those four-color light spots have some simple light emotions, but for Seal, without exception, they are all emotions, and they seem to be happy to play with Seal. After Seal woke up in the morning, he actually remembered his dream very clearly, which made Seal, who was curious about everything, feel amazing and full of fun. Finally, when Seal tried to recall the feeling of making a cameo in Pikachu the next night, he actually felt the four-color light spots in the dream in a very awake state, and felt an emotion called excitement from them. In the next month, under Schur's continuous research, it is basically certain that the four-color light spots that can be seen everywhere around him are the legendary elements. According to his own description of Hogwarts in the original book, Schur made a bold guess. The blue light points represent the wind element of Ravenclaw, the fire-red light point is the fire element of Gryffindor, and the khaki light point is the earth element of Hufflepuff. And the last remaining silver dots represent the water element of Slytherin. As a five-good youth who grew up under the red flag, even if he is now in the embrace of the capitalist empire, Charles still believes in the teaching of the red flag, after making a series of bold assumptions and careful verification. Some of Seal's guesses have basically been confirmed. First of all, these must be various elements as he guessed, but do these elements really represent the four major houses of Hogwarts? What is the Sorting Hat based on? Seal unknown. After understanding what these are, Seal feels that he may be able to change jobs, and maybe he can't be a happy little wizard in Hogwarts now, but this doesn't delay his transfer to become an element mage in DNF now, right? So Seal started a month of crazy and hard training, but what made Seal feel desperate was that even if he tried his best, Seal dared to swear that he had used all his energy and strength in his life, but he still could only use the wind element as a handheld electric fan. It is too big to blow it out. Fire element Dingtian can be used as a finger lighter. At most, a flame damage reduction buff has been added, and the buff is not very large, and it will still burn after a long time. As for the two elements of water and soil, one is the dust and dust that makes it difficult for Mrs. William to clean up, and the other may be that in the case of survival in the wild, Charles can speed up the time for the self-made water collector to fill a glass of water from 1 hour to 1 hour. 50 minutes, which made Seal a little depressed. But it's not without good things. After seeing Hermione, Seal began to exercise. At least he made himself look like a beautiful little boy, instead of looking indifferent at first glance. And because they became neighbors in a community with Hermione, the two really mastered a lot of knowledge beyond their age in Muggle courses, which made them basically have nothing to say in school and life. Good friend. Seal also gave Hermione the title of Miss Know-It-All in advance, and of course Hermione was not to be outdone by giving Seal the title of Mr. Naughty. The relationship between the two has grown by leaps and bounds in their daily bickering. Now they can basically reach the point where the Grangers feel that they have an extra son, and the William and his wife feel that they have an extra daughter. Isn't it? Of course, if Seal had a system, he would definitely achieve an achievement called Childhood Sweetheart. Just as Seal was enjoying his afternoon leisurely, he remembered the knock on the door. Before Seal could answer, the door was pushed open, and a small hairy ball walked in directly. Hermione glanced at Seal, who was lying on the deck chair like a salted fish. I knew, Seal, you're playing some magic tricks again. Even if I ask you, you won't tell me the reason. Hermione looked at Seal with a pile of documents. Get up and see. I think we can see the school for our grades, although I think Eden High School is very good, but you keep telling me to wait. God, it's already August. Shire, maybe don't look at it again. We will both face the predicament of not going to school next year. Don't worry about Hermione. We will be invited by the school, don't worry. Seal was still lying calmly, with no intention of getting up at all, which made Hermione puff out her cheeks and almost turned into a hamster to bite Seal. But before Hermione could make a move, two owls flew over and landed on the window that Seal opened. Look, as I said, the school's invitation is here. Charles stood up proudly, walked over to the owls and took two letters from their claws. The letter was written on parchment, and there was a bright red lacquer mark on the envelope, which was indeed an acceptance letter from Hogwarts. To Hermione, this should be yours. Don't be stunned, take a look, I'll write a reply, and then we'll go down and tell the parents. Shire looked at Hermione and said to him, at this time Hermione, as if she was stunned, she swore that it was the first time in her life that she had seen such a fresh and refined way of delivering letters. With Ciel's reminder, she hurriedly opened the letter and read it. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Confederation of Wizards, Level 1 Sir Merlin, Grand Mage, Chief Mage of Wizengamore. Dear Miss Hermione, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. We will be waiting for your reply from your owl by July 31st. Vice Principal Female. Minerva McGonagall. As soon as Hermione read the letter, she looked up and saw that Seal had written a reply and handed it to the owl. The two owls looked at Seal and fluttered their wings and flew away. Charles, School of Magic. You're not kidding me, there's still magic in this world. Hermione looked at Seal in disbelief. It's always been there, Hermione, it's like my little trick. I've been telling you it's magic, you just don't believe it. I've written back to the school telling us we're together and inviting AA professor is coming to guide us tomorrow morning. Come on, let's go downstairs and tell Mom and Dad about it. We'll find out tomorrow morning if it's true or not, won't we? Maybe you can stay here tonight. Tomorrow morning, you can learn about the situation as soon as possible, and it will save you or the professor running back and forth, right? While talking, Seal pulled Hermione, who is still in Who Am I? What should I do? Downstairs to contact the parents of the two. Chapter 5 _ Hello my. Fuck old dang. Seal is very confident, very confident. In the past life, after watching the original book and watching the movie, after watching the movie and watching fans, Seal is very confident, at least not worried about the resurrection of the two-hole socket man and the Horcrux, and some questions about the start of school. Seal is very confident. After being bombarded with so many fan fictions in his previous life, Seal also felt that he must have some opinions, and he dared not say that he was 100% sure, at least 95% sure. So Seal slept very early last night and slept soundly. Of course, in contrast to this, a certain brown hairball who had his own cabin in the Seal family expressed that he was very excited and rolled over and over on the bed. He just couldn't fall asleep. He thought that he might be able to fall asleep with Seal, but after thinking of something, he blushed and lay down again. After a night of struggle and excitement, he finally fell asleep in the early morning. Early in the morning, Hermione's parents hurried to Shire's house. The parents of both families tacitly asked for leave. They stayed at Shire's house together. Mrs. William even came with a gun last night. The police brought it back. The parents of both parties reached a consensus in a very short period of time. If the person who came was an out-and-out liar, then Lisa's police identity could just play a role and add a performance. If the person who came was a real magician, then the only person in this group who has the ability to resist Lisa is their main output. Before determining the good and evil of the magic school, they will not just hand over their children to a school they have never heard of. After all, in Muggle movies and TV series, wizards and magicians are mixed, and there are even cannibals. Seal said it didn't matter. Shao-Erqing clearly remembered that the professor who came was probably Professor McGonagall, so the only person in the family who was relaxed was probably Seal. In the tense atmosphere where both families had dark circles under their eyes, except Shire, quietly finished breakfast, and sat neatly in the living room without saying a word, really tense. Mr. Granger even put a baseball bat. Time passed slowly, and just as Shire was about to pull Hermione back to the room, the doorbell finally rang. Gosh, I never thought the doorbell sounded so good. Seal muttered silently. Before Mrs. Lisa could react to stop her, Seal rushed to the door and opened it. Hello, my fuck, old dang, Shire shouted in Chinese in the second half of the sentence. At this time, his jaw dropped in surprise, and he didn't notice Deng Bu at all. There was a deep curiosity in Leto's eyes. Hello, child, no one ever calls me that, isn't it strange? Dumbledore smiled, not caring what Seal called himself. Looks like you know me, child, have we met? Forgive an old man's memory, I don't think we ever met in my memory. At this time, Seal was completely stunned, and his head was spinning round and round. Even countless colleagues in the previous life called Dumbledore the White Devil, and the saying that legilimency was a passive skill had all gone through in Seal's head. But then he relaxed, not to mention the passive skill of legilimency, and simply using the surname of Dumbledore, Seal dared to say that I believe him. In the original book, perhaps Dumbledore arranged Harry's life and taught Harry to sacrifice, but it is undeniable that Dumbledore never wanted to harm anyone. Even if Harry sacrificed in the end, it was all for Harry. The next back road. Different from the 3 generations in Hokage, Dumbledore is definitely a good person, even if he is so cruel sometimes. Even his own life can be counted into the plan, but he never planned to let other people really die except himself. Thinking of this, Seal relaxed, and even a little wished that old Deng too could read his mind. After all, for the next 7 years, he would have to fight with the 2-hole socket man without a nose, which is not as good as the old man. Deng Yifa used legilimency, and then happily got the 7 Horcruxes, so that he could study with peace of mind. The scream of Hermione when Bella carved a mudblood on her arm in the 7th movie is unforgettable to this day. No, sir, but I've seen your picture. Charles was completely relaxed, and even tugged at Dumbledore's beard boldly. Well, sir, your beard is too long, this is for you, might be of help to you. Charles took out a pink bow with a little dot from his pocket and gave it to Dumbledore, which he had intended to give to Hermione. Oh, thanks, kid, I've never received such a thoughtful gift, but kid, can you tell me where you've seen me? Dumbledore smiled, and naturally took the bow on his beard. He didn't care about the bright pink color. Charles, come here. Before Charles could answer Dumbledore, Mrs. William ordered Charles to come back, and the 4 adults in the family looked at Charles and Dumbledore nervously. William Madam's hand touched the gun on her waist, and she even swore silently in her heart that as long as this strange old man dared to do anything unfavorable to Seal, she would dare to shoot the old man to death, and then go to the game Surrender Yourself. Charles shrugged, glanced at Dumbledore, then walked over to his mother. Sir, we've never heard of Hogwarts, until you prove that you really know magic and aren't some weird cannibal. Please stay where you are before you meet the wizard, otherwise I have the right to arrest you. Mrs. William dragged Charles behind her, and looked at the old man at the door with a vigilant look, without the slightest relaxation. Even Mr. Granger next to him had grabbed the baseball bat beside him. Okay, don't be nervous, ma'am, I'll prove that I'm a real magician, and I won't eat children, Dumbledore replied with a smile. Since he was kicked out by Professor McGonagall 10 years ago and started to welcome new students, he has seen too many scenes like this, even more intense than this. After speaking, Dumbledore picked up his wand and swept the whole house spotlessly with a wave of his hand. With another wave of his hand, he made the ordinary sofa beside them big and gorgeous, and even conjured a little lion beside him out of thin air. Not as high as Dumbledore's knees, but alive, and even uttered a milky roar at the 2 families. In this regard, the 2 families basically fell into a sluggishness at the same time, and the scene in front of them was a bit impacting the life of the four adults for decades. Okay, now I think we can sit down and talk about Ms. Granger's and Mr. Lancaster's admissions. Dumbledore asked, still kindly. Chapter 6_wand. Isn't that stuff born with it? After a while, the Shire family and the Granger family finally sat down calmly and started a conversation with Professor Dumbledore. After Professor Dumbledore's demonstration and explanation, the parents of both parties finally confirmed Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is just an ordinary 7-year boarding school that teaches magically gifted children. When Dumbledore finally dealt with the parents' excessive concern for their children, he finally had time to face Seal and ask the question that had not been answered just now. Okay, Charles, you haven't answered my question just now. Have you seen me somewhere? Dumbledore smiled and looked at the crème brûlée that Mrs. William just gave him. Seal, the most powerful elder wand in the legend, was placed on the coffee table by him, as if it were an ordinary broken wooden stick. Well, this stuff is so delicious, maybe I should buy some to take home. The corners of Seal's mouth twitched, and he pushed his unopened crème brûlée to Dumbledore's eyes, thinking that he was really an old bee, but his face didn't change, and he still replied with a smile, No, we've never met, sir, but I know you, because I once saw a moving newspaper with your name and photo on it when I was looking for parts in a junkyard. Sir, I think what they said about you, how to say? It's hard to say. Of course I've been researching this for a long time, but I still can't make the picture of our newspaper move, so I've been depressed for a long time. Seal is now not sure whether Dumbledore used legilimency on him, so the editor arranged it for a while, hoping to test old Dang. In fact, he was already nervous to death. Ha 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 ha. Dumbledore's beard trembled when he laughed. It's normal, little Charles, there will always be people who like to watch other people's gossip arrangements. To be honest, even myself sometimes can't help it. Look at what they wrote, it's wonderful anyway, isn't it? Okay, old Dang doesn't seem to have any legilimency at all, or he just didn't make a sound. Charles smiled awkwardly, a little unsure of Dumbledore's attitude. But Dumbledore didn't seem to have any intention of continuing to discuss with Seal whether there was any doubt in what Seal just said. It was almost noon, and Dumbledore finally stood up. Okay, gentlemen and ladies, I think maybe we should go, so that we can return at noon after we have bought what we need. With a magical lunch in Diagon Alley, I think our two little wizards can't wait to have their own wands. Wait, Professor, can I ask, is the so-called magic wand the little wooden stick in your hand? Did they all look the same? Mrs. Williams seemed to suddenly remember something, and looked at Dumbledore suspiciously, wand in hand. If so, I don't know, but Charles seems to have one. Dumbledore looked at Mrs. William in shock. Can you show me, ma'am? You know, there are always a lot of people with bad intentions, whether it's Muggle or wizarding. Dumbledore looked very serious, yes, but Mrs. William looked very embarrassed. She looked at Seal from time to time, which made Seal also look puzzled. Okay, Professor Dumbledore, can you come with me? There are some things I don't want Charles to know. Mrs. William seemed to have made up her mind. Look at the old man very seriously. Charles, who was sitting on the side, quickly changed from a puzzled look to a look that I understood. He looked at Mrs. William. Mom, I'm not biological, right? No, child, how can you say that? You are our child, there is no problem, even if you are not a wizard, you are our child. Before Mrs. William could refute, Mr. William stood up first, panicking. Panicked answer. Come on, Dad, 2 yellow hairs can't produce a black one anyway. Please respect the basic genetics, and I don't care if it's biological or not, anyway you and Mom are the same. My parents. Seal rolled his eyes and complained indifferently about his panicked dad, but the latter sentence made the William and his wife feel extremely at ease. Just now, the two almost thought they were going to lose Seal. On the other hand, the Granger family was shocked by this, but they also reflected it later. After all, the parties did not care, and they would not have any excessive reaction. Oh, inadvertently I seem to have witnessed the unbreakable emotional bond of the family. The smile on Dumbledore's face seemed to be a little stronger. Okay, Mrs. William, can you show me what you said? Okay, please wait a moment. Mrs. William ran upstairs and took down a cloth-wrapped thing after a while. It was very long, and the length and the wand in Dumbledore's hand could be vaguely seen. Almost the same. This is the only thing that Seal brought when he came. At that time, Seal was not even in the swaddling clothes, but he was holding this in his hand. I was thinking of waiting for Seal to become an adult or saying to Seal at the time. I didn't expect today. Mrs. William was at a loss for words. Hey, Mom, don't act like a life or death. I have to come back. You'll never try to kick me out of the house until I'm an adult. Charles saw that his mother was in a bad mood. It was a big joke, but it also made Mrs. William look much better, and a smile began to appear on her face. On the contrary, Dumbledore, the smile that always existed on the old man's face disappeared, and became extremely serious. He did not directly take the cloth bag, but used his wand to direct the cloth bag to hang in the air and slowly came to the coffee table. The former instructed the cloth to uncover himself a little bit to let the wand in it reveal its true content. At that moment, both Seal and Dumbledore leaked shocked expressions. Dumbledore was shocked because the wand suspended in the air was almost the same as the Elder Wand in his hand, and Seal was shocked because this was the result of his previous life. The Haute Couture Elder Wand in his hand when the thunder struck. There was no difference except that the tip of the stick was charred and leaked out of the molten metal rod, and there were slight thunder marks on the whole body. Dumbledore looked at the floating wand carefully, and even after casting a lot of spells, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. There is no doubt that this is a wand. Very powerful, but I don't know why I always feel that he's still what's missing. Mr. Shire, maybe he's always been yours, and you can take it to Diagon Alley to see Mr. Ollivander, the best wand master in the whole of England. Chapter 7_Diagon Alley. Okay sir, I think we need to hurry up, it's almost noon. After Dumbledore made sure that what he brought with him in his previous life was harmless, Seal took it in his hand. Well, nothing happened, it just felt a little numb, but it was very comfortable. Seal looked at his high definition and felt that it was nothing except the expression on Lao Deng's face that was unexpectedly and constipated. Look at Fanda, it's best if you can use it, and you can't use Sha'ur, but what the hell is this illusion that Li Gui meets Li Kui? Seal shook his head, pushed the messy thoughts out of his mind, and began to urge everyone to act, but he ran out with the wand in his left hand and Hermione in the right. After the family was all tidied up, standing in the yard, several people looked at each other. How should we get to the corner alley? Mr. Granger watched as everyone stood there and even included Dumbledore, paused, then summoned the courage to ask. Oh, I think we will simply go by car. I don't think this old man knows about this. Maybe I need to rely on you, but I know the address. Dumbledore said teasingly, looking at Mr. William. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to drive. I think we can sit down and go together. Of course, William and Hermione may have to squeeze a bit. Mr. William quickly took out his car keys and walked to his car. He bought a large commercial van, which is very convenient and can sit everyone down. Shire pouted, leaned towards Hermione, and whispered to him, Hey, Hermione, I'll bet with you first. Ling, it is definitely that Mr. Dumbledore has never built a Muggle car. Want to experience it, can you believe it? Hermione blushed a little because she was too close, but then she was amused by Ciel's words. Laugh. Haha, Mr. Shire, you should call me Professor, and to be honest, I'm really curious about Muggle cars. Maybe because I'm getting old, I always feel that the way wizards go out is a bit awkward. Dumbledore smiled and looked at the two little ones without making any refutation. He also cooperated with the two little ones to complain about himself, which made them laugh nonstop. After some journeys, Dumbledore finally brought 6 people to the entrance of Diagon Alley. Looking at the slightly dilapidated leaky cauldron bar in front of him, Dumbledore was also a little helpless, shook his head and then took the 6 people. Walked in. Oh, Dumbledore, you're here to bring a new student. Do you want a drink? Old Tom, who was sitting at the front desk, asked with a smile when he looked at Dumbledore with the expression I understand. No, Tom, I think we're still in a hurry, maybe when I'm done. Come with me, gentlemen and ladies. Then he led the group to the back patio. Look, from this count. 3 pieces, count 3 pieces sideways, and tap with the wand. After Dumbledore finished knocking, the whole wall seemed to come alive, moving and folded continuously, and soon it turned into an arch, leaking out of the lively Diagon Alley inside, and the sound of hawking and bargaining sounded like a sudden sound. The first time they came into contact with the magic world, the 6 people were all curious. Even Seal, who had seen a movie in his previous life, was the same. Compared to the Hermione family and parents, Seal had a little more anticipation and excitement. These were all dreams from previous lives. Welcome to Diagon Alley, Dumbledore said to them with a smile. First we need to go to Gringotts to exchange some money. Wizards' currencies are not the same as Muggles. Go to Gringotts. Mr. Dumbledore, do wizards also have banks? Mr. Granger asked curiously, the old wizard walking in front. Yes, sir, wizards also have banks, but they are controlled by goblins, and wizards' banks are not as complete as Muggles, and more only provide storage and exchange. Dumbledore still smiled and answered this the child's question, without the slightest impatience. Goblin! Hermione screamed with a look of anticipation on her face. Dumbledore looked back and smiled and said, I'm afraid you're going to disappoint Miss Granger. The real goblins are not what they say in Muggle fairy tales. On the contrary, they are very greedy for wealth, and they are also very good at taking care of them. Wealth, so the wizards hand over their wealth to the goblins, which is more of a partnership. Quote. Seal, who was walking in the back and looking around, glanced at Dumbledore, but did not debunk his nonsense. Of course, he had read the original book and watched the movie. Of course, he knew that wizards did not trust goblins at all, and the reason why they let them take care of wizards' wealth is due to the compromise of interests after the war. If the goblins dare to leak a clue, the wizards don't mind directly replacing the goblins in Gringotts, even if they can't even count the number of Gin-Galleons. Let the goblins continue to rule. Soon they came to the door of a building with crooked pillars and silver-white marble. In front of it was a shiny bronze gate. The door was guarded by goblins in scarlet and gold uniforms, bowing to the customers when they came. When they entered, a second door appeared. The second door was silver and was engraved with the following words. Come in, stranger, but beware, what happens to insatiable greed? Blindly asking for nothing, you will be punished the most severely. So if you want to take from our underground vault, a treasure that was never yours, you have been warned, thief, that you will not bring treasure, but evil. When Dumbledore walked in with the 2 families, they entered a spacious marble hall, where about a dozen goblins sat behind the long counter and made records on the large ledger. Some use a balance to weigh coins, and some use an eyepiece to detect gems. Mr. Granger and Mr. William were amazed. Finally, under the leadership of Dumbledore, he came to a counter. Hello, sir, these new students this year, and their families, I think they need to exchange gold galleons. Dumbledore said politely to the goblin sitting at the counter. The goblin raised his eyes and glanced at the wizard in front of him. Wubo Farui said in a sharp voice, the exchange ratio is 1:5, and the maximum exchange rate is 100 galleons. If you need to exchange, please put the Muggle banknotes on the right side of the scale. The 2 families looked at each other. In the end, Mr. William took out a large amount of banknotes and exchanged them for 100 galleons, and then Mr. Granger also completed the exchange. The goblin never saw the entire group. It was not until they walked out of the Gringotts gate that the expressions of the 2 families turned into a smile, and Hermione even took Ciel's hand and complained, these goblins are different from what I imagined, making people feel very arrogant, very rude. Dumbledore smiled and patted Hermione's hairy head because of anger. Calm down, Miss Granger, I don't like these goblins very much, but you know, no matter who comes, they are the same attitude, unless you can give them a big bag of gold as a reward. Well, boys, I think we should start our diagonal journey. You all bring the list, we can go and buy the robes first. While waiting for the robes to be made at a good time, we can pick up wands and go to the bookstore to see your textbooks or if there are any books you like. Chapter 8 _ Shire's Theory. After going through the collection of various body data receipts from Mrs. Moken, Seal, with a broken face, finally ran out of the clothing store with Hermione, who was laughing so hard. Because of Mrs. Moken's strong love, she even proposed that Shire be an endorser of clothing products. Seeing the expressions of interest on his mother's and Mrs. Granger's faces, Shire felt that if he didn't run, he might be can't run away. After finally escaping Mrs. Moken's clutches, Seal and the others came to the bookstore that he and Hermione were most interested in. Hermione was a primary school tyrant and would not refuse. "I can't put it down," as well as all kinds of magic spells that look colorful. After the two exchanged the book list and asked Dumbledore, who was watching them buy books with a smile on the side, it was confirmed that the books they bought were not duplicated, and there was a high probability that there would not be too many copies in the school. Even after Seal bought a few research journals that were said to be at the forefront of transfiguration and spells at the behest of Dumbledore, when he was about to check out, Seal seemed to suddenly remember something, ran aside and took it again. Several books on the history of magic. Seeing this, Hermione didn't say anything. After all, she was very interested in books she hadn't read, but Dumbledore expressed his surprise, and reminded him, "Mr. Shire, the magic you took history will be taught by professors at Hogwarts, and I think you are not taking the textbooks prescribed by our school. I think these books may not be necessary for you. Moreover, you have to keep it after all. If you live in school, there is a limit to how much money can be exchanged every year." Hearing this, Hermione also said that she told Shire to return the book, and it was really impossible to take care of the senior grades and pick up the textbooks. Charles looked at Professor Dumbledore, lowered his head and pondered, and said, "Professor, I don't think I have any problem with these history books. For a group we don't know, I want the fastest way to understand. Just by studying their history and reading their history, we can grasp the core of this group, which will help us to integrate into this group more quickly. The history that students see is not the whole history, it can even be said to be the history after some beautification. So compared to these bloody historical truths in my hand, please forgive me for using the whole word bloody, but looking at the entire human history, it is a bloody history of struggles and wars, so I think I prefer to use time to see the truth." Hermione was so frightened by Ciel's words that she stood still, and it took a long time to calm down. "Naughty man, I never thought that a person who has studied mathematics, physics and chemistry all day long would have such a profound research on history." Charles rolled his eyes and said that Miss Know-It-all knew very little about herself, condemned this, and picked up the "check out your wallet." But Dumbledore, who was behind Ciel, had a charitable smile on his face, but his heart was constantly thinking about Ciel's words. Now he is not sure about Ciel's thoughts. In his opinion, this child seems to know a lot of things, and even master a lot of unknown secrets, and what surprises Dumbledore the most is Ciel's insight and knowledge. Wisdom reminded him of a friend of his youth. The only thing that reassured Dumbledore about Charles was that, in his opinion, Charles would never be the next Voldemort. After all, Charles was surrounded by love, his parents, harmonious neighbors, and even a little girl who loved each other. "Friend," Dumbledore smiled, which was one of the main reasons why he had insisted on not using passive moves on Ciel until now. After going through a big purchase, the two fathers were covered with bags and boxes of all sizes. After buying a lot of books, Shire and Hermione must have no money to buy pets. Well, especially Ciel, unless they both wanted to cast spells with their bare hands without a wand. So the group headed to the last stop of the journey, Ollivander's wand shop. When Charles finally came to the wand shop that countless muggles had in mind in his previous life, there was an inexplicable taste in his heart. Compared with the performance in the movie, the real Ollivander's wand shop a little more shabby. The faded lacquer sign reads, "Ollivander, well-made wand since 382 BC. Pushing the door open and entering, the shop is very small. There is nothing but a bench. Thousands of long and narrow boxes containing wands are almost piled up to the ceiling, and a thick layer of ash has fallen." Suddenly, a ghost-like greeting sounded, startling everyone in the two families. "Good noon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I have seen you, the new school children this year." Mr. Ollivander came as if floating from the wand shelf. When he walked to the counter and saw where Dumbledore was standing at a glance, Ollivander's unwavering face was full of excitement for a moment. But before he could speak, Dumbledore spoke first. Mr. Ollivander, maybe we can communicate privately, but today's protagonists are our two little wizards, okay? And our Mr. Shire with a wand, I'm sure you'll be more interested. Only then did Mr. Ollivander react, and he hurriedly looked at the two little ones in the crowd, and returned to that state of clamoring. He looked at the two with silver-white eyes. Then who starts first? Hermione was so nervous that she clenched Shire's sleeve. Considering that she might still use her original haute couture, she lightly patted Hermione's hand, gave her an encouraging look, and whispered to Hermione. Min said, ladies first. No, don't worry, I'll be there all the time. After seeing Shire for a while, Hermione seemed to have plucked up her courage and was less nervous, so she stepped forward and said to Ollivander, I'll go first, sir. Oh, brave girl, which is your dominant hand? Ollivander asked softly. Right hand, sir, Hermione replied. Okay, please raise your arms, don't be nervous, child. After saying that, he turned around and went to look for something in the piles of wands, but a small silver ruler at Hermione's feet flew up and started to carry out a stab at Hermione. A series of measurements. Finally, in a burst of explosions and smoke, Hermione found her own wand, a Mantang wooden wand with a dragon heartstring core and a length of 10.75 inches. Ollivander was very happy about this, and kept telling Hermione that it was a very powerful wand. The future Hermione will definitely stand out, and to remember that if the wand chooses the wizard or something, Seal enjoys watching it, because he always has the feeling of watching a movie. Chapter 9_Birth of the Wand. After Hermione finally chose the wand, it was finally Ciel's turn. After experiencing Hermione's wand, Ollivander obviously did not forget what Dumbledore said to him, and looked at Shaw curiously. You. Charles took out the old wand from his arms, handed it to Ollivander, and said, Sir, this wand came with me into this world. According to my parents, when they found me, I have this wand in my hand, but Dumbledore says it's missing something, so I hope you can help me see it. Ollivander gently took the wand and began to look carefully. The more he looked, the more excited he became, as if he had encountered something he had never seen before. Oh, my God, it's amazing, really amazing. The old wand's the shape represents death, the body of Populus Euphratica represents immortality. God, what did I see? The wand bone with mithril inscription. Thunder injected his soul into him. Amazing. This is amazing, I have never seen such a wand. The way to make it. Quote. Ollivander's face flushed with excitement, as if he had encountered the love of his life. He looked at Ciel's haute couture wand over and over again. During the description, Ciel's face was red, and Ciel swore that he never made a wand in his previous life. Thanks so much. With a hint of embarrassment, Ciel interrupted Ollivander's admiration in a low voice. Sir, you haven't said what the problem is. Yes, boy, this is undoubtedly a powerful and magical wand, but unfortunately, boy, this is only an unfinished product. Boy, he has no core of life, so it's just a weeping unfinished piece, like a living soul trapped in a dry corpse, and I thought I could try and finish it for you. But boy, you know, once he uses afterlife, under this perfect cycle, he will give birth to a very powerful consciousness, even more than the consciousness of all wands in my shop, which also means that if I complete it, maybe he will not recognize you. Lord, you may lose it forever. Are you sure you want to finish it? Ollivander looked at Ciel. Charles didn't hesitate. Sure, sir, please complete it, even if his last choice is not me. No matter what, this is something I was born with. I can't bear to let him continue to cry. After he finished speaking, he added in his heart, if possible, I will add a core to him when I order it, but I was just a sad working muggle in my last life. Okay, child, let me think about it. Death and immortality coexist, but the soul is a violent thunderbolt. What should I cooperate with? Unicorn. No, it's too pure to give Thunderbolt life. Dragon. No. This will only make the soul more irritable. Thunderbird. It has a good relationship, and it must be able to control the irritable soul. For a while, Ollivander silently recited dozens of magical creatures, constantly enumerating and denying them. Time passed by, and even Seal and Hermione began to yawn. Suddenly, Ollivander seemed to understand something, and shouted excitedly, I know, Phoenix. It's definitely possible." Then he turned to look at Dumbledore, and there seemed to be a trace in his eyes. "Crazy," startled Dumbledore, who was standing by the old god. "Fawkes. Mr. Dumbledore, Fawkes. I need Fawkes to help me, and I think he's going to die too." "Yes, Fawkes is about to die, okay, Fawkes," Dumbledore shouted, and suddenly a large group of flames appeared on Dumbledore's shoulders, accompanied by a burst of singing. Fawkes appeared on Dumbledore's shoulders. "Its state is not very good, it looks old, and it can't help it at all, like a big turkey that is about to lose its hair." "Yes, Mr. Dumbledore, I need a fox's tail feather, and maybe later when I talk about the tail feather being added to the wand as a wand core may require Fawkes to hold this wand and go to Nirvana with him." Even Mr. D looked very excited. "I haven't tried this method, but now I want to save this more magic wand can only do this. Death and immortality are entangled. Thunder is the soul, the phoenix gives life, Nirvana in the fire, let the immortality overcome death, and reverse the huge vitality resurrection wand." Ollivander kept talking, but his hands didn't stop at all. After hurriedly pulling out one of Fawkes's tail feathers, he started production on the spot. Of course, this behavior aroused dissatisfied protests from Fawkes. With Dumbledore's utmost comfort, Fawkes finally decided to do this, so 7 people and 1 bird appeared, all looking curiously at Ollivander's operation. I saw Ollivander turned around and took out a metal table full of inscriptions. He put the wand into the groove and began to chant the incantation. He didn't stop for a moment, and he pulled it out. An exquisite olive wood wand kept writing inscriptions in the air. These inscriptions seemed to have life, and they kept rushing into the wand in the groove on the stage, and even the inscriptions on the metal table kept lighting up one by one. If nothing else, from the point of view of Seal, who has not had any formal magic education, at least the special effects are full. Finally, Ollivander was sweating, and when he was about to lose his hold, the inscriptions on the stage finally lit up. At this time, the inscriptions with the wand emitted a dazzling light, and Ollivander held the phoenix on his right hand. The tail feather was placed on the wand, and I saw that the tail feather melted in as quickly as it melted. Just as it melted in, the wand began to tremble, getting worse and worse, and suddenly flew out of the platform. "It's now, Fawkes!" Ollivander yelled, and Fawkes jumped up with a face, grabbed the wand with his claws and pressed the wand on the table, and immediately Nirvana with a long cry. All that was left was a large pile of burnt dust on the table. Seal was already stunned at this time. This was too magical, and Seal swore that this scene was the most magical scene that Seal had ever seen, including past and present life. "This, Sir, Professor, Fawkes this." Seal was incoherent, although he knew that Fawkes was fine, but the shock at this time really made Seal unable to say a complete sentence. Dumbledore stepped forward quickly, and carefully picked up Fawkes after Nirvana from the ashes. It has now become a wrinkled chick with no feathers all over its body. "It's okay, Seal, Fawkes is a phoenix, reborn in the fire, just now is the Nirvana of the phoenix." Dumbledore comforted the stunned Seal. At this time, Ollivander finally calmed down, leaned on the table, carefully pushed aside the ashes left by Fawkes, and gradually leaked out a wand, which had changed a lot at this time. Although it still has the appearance of the Elder Wand, the place from the tip of the wand to the first tumor ball has turned into silver-white metal. From the first tumor ball, the original black lightning crack path is also filled with silver-white metal. It looks like countless silver-white thunderbolts slowly extending down from the tip of the stick. "Try it, boy, this is probably the best wand I've ever made." Ollivander gently picked up the wand and handed it to Charles. At this time, Seal was still in the delicate magic and did not regain his senses, and took the wand foolishly. At the moment when Seal held the wand, 4 light balls of silver white, fire red, khaki, and blue appeared out of thin air, and began to revolve around Seal. Finally, in the Seal after his wand spewed out a bright purple lightning, the 4 balls of light penetrated into Ciel's body and disappeared. He's yours now, boy, obviously he's approved of you. This wand is the most perfect wand I've ever made since I was born, and I don't think I've ever been or will ever be able to do anything better than this. Still an excellent wand, loyal and powerful, Mr. Ciel, and I hope you can use it to expand and shine. Ollivander looked at Ciel, silver eyes full of exhaustion and relief. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. Thank you, Fawkes. I will. Charles replied seriously after thanking him solemnly. Chapter 10_Wizards and Wizards. Dumbledore parted ways with the Shire and the Grangers at the door of the Leaky Cauldron, after he was finally done with the wand. Fawkes, who had just passed his nirvana, appeared in the headmaster's room at Hogwarts with a bang. At this time, the headmaster's room was unusually quiet, except for the sound of unknown silverware or the sound of whirling or spraying white smoke. Dumbledore, how is this year's freshman? A dignified lady on the wall asked Dumbledore. Great, Dallas, really, I also found a special freshman. God, you know Dallas, I have experienced so many amazing things today. But this freshman, if he is good, let me guide you. Maybe he can inherit the wealth of the 4 founders at the same time and guide us to create the next future. Dumbledore replied with a smile and didn't say much. Picked up his wand and waved it lightly, and a silver-white phoenix appeared in the office. Please call Professor McGonagall for me. The password is ZZ Honey Candy. The silver-white phoenix squeaked and walked away through the wall. After a while, Professor McGonagall hurriedly appeared in Dumbledore's office. Headmaster Dumbledore, you'd better give me a reasonable reason. You should know that it's just before the start of the school year, and I'm very busy. You should know that. Professor McGonagall's face was not so good. It's very important, Minerva, it's very important. I want to know, how long have you been stuck in the wizarding realm? Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall very seriously. McGonagall never thought that Dumbledore would ask such a question, and she was stunned for a moment. Then the slightly angry face before slowly slowed down, and he sighed a little helplessly. It's been a long time, Dumbledore. Maybe my talent isn't as good as yours, and I'm still just a wizard. Unless I'm like you know who, I might have a hard time seeing the threshold to go further, Professor McGonagall said. Said helplessly. Since she became the Dean of Gryffindor, Professor McGonagall, who has always been very serious in front of students, is so helpless and helpless at this time. No, Minerva, Voldemort didn't have to step into another realm like Gellert and I did. He just used dangerous magical transformations, and some very unprofessional black magic to force the level of life. Like a Stitch Strange, you have seen the end result. He has become inhumane, destroyed by the love of the mother of a 1-year-old child. That is not the right way. Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall seriously. Don't think about his way, McGonagall, you have to make your own way. Dumbledore looked at McGonagall and said, everyone has his own way. Mine is fraternity, and I believe love will be human the strongest weapon and energy. So I took that step and was no longer a wizard, and my old friend Gellert, because of self-confidence, until now he believes that what he is doing is to save the wizarding world. Strong self-confidence gave him the ticket to another level and he proved successful. Quote. After listening to Dumbledore's words, Professor McGonagall thought for a long time and looked at Dumbledore. Okay, I think I'll be doing research when I get back. Is there anything else? You know Dumbledore, I can't wait to use the Hogwarts protection charm to help me before school starts. Live. Oh, yes, of course there are things. Dumbledore seemed to react suddenly, looking at Professor McGonagall. You know I'm going to welcome the freshmen today. Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall with a smile. Professor McGonagall became more and more puzzled. Yes, I know, that little wizard named Shire, and a little girl named Hermione, they seem to live very close. What happened? Yes, my dear Professor Egger, that seal is very unusual, he is a born magician. Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall and said softly. Besides, Minerva, I suspect that this Monsieur Shire is also a born prophetic magus. This is impossible, McGonagall said at the same time with the portraits of the principals on the wall. Dumbledore, No magician has appeared in nearly 1,000 years. Even you and that one have just stepped on the threshold, born magician. This is impossible, except that the 4 founders have reached the legendary in this state. There is no record of other situations. Dumbledore, you should not be presbyopic. A headmaster black on the wall mocked Dumbledore. As a headmaster from Slytherin, always it's that Dumbledore doesn't seem to deal with it so well. No, I can't see it wrong. The strong elemental power and the almost solid soul power in his body are very powerful, but he should not know how to use his talent, and I saw him a lot of the behavior, including the thought that is inadvertently expressed, is too similar to Gellert, although I don't want to admit it, but unfortunately it is true. If not for him there is still a 10 with the magic power of a 1-year-old wizard. I would really wonder if that old friend of mine I hadn't seen for a long time came out of his tower. Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall very seriously, not at all usual. Li Lao was not ashamed and performed indifferently. Albus, you mean, you are worried that he will become another Dark Lord? Professor McGonagall frowned and asked uncertainly after listening to Dumbledore's words. No, Minerva, on the contrary, I've made a mistake already, and I think we should just give him the right direction, but for some reason, he always gives me a feeling, Minerva, as if he's interested he is only interested in magic. Whether it is a magician's magic or a wizard's magic, he is only interested in magic itself, and he doesn't care about other viewpoints, and even disdains the noble sense that many wizards seem to have. Every time I talk to me, when I mention the word Muggle, I will subconsciously frown. You know what I mean. Compared with the magic world, I think he may be more nostalgic for him. The Muggle world that has always grown up. Dumbledore rubbed his brow with his hand and said with a headache. I think this is normal, Albus. Professor McGonagall obviously doesn't care about it. Many young Muggle wizards will have nostalgia for their own world before they enter school, but every time they really step into the magic world a lot of times it's hard to go back to the Muggle world. I don't think it's a problem. I think the only thing we have to do is educate him. There can never be another Dark Lord at Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall said seriously. Hopefully, we still have a lot of time in the future, don't we, Minerva? Take your time. As for your Dark Lord, take it easy, Minerva. A second Dark Lord is unlikely, but the first is naughty. The king is very likely. Dumbledore seemed to remember something and smiled happily. His beard was shaking, and the bright pink bow on it was very conspicuous. Professor McGonagall frowned and felt that things were not simple. He just stared at Dumbledore without saying a word. Okay, you know, I went to his house and saw his parents. How can I put it? His parents told me something about him. Before Dumbledore could finish his words, he was caught. Professor McGonagall interrupted. What about the Weasley twins? Professor McGonagall asked this question seriously and nervously. Well, the adventurous spirit is not inferior to them, even stronger, but he prefers to do some strange and big things rather than pranks. Dumbledore replied with a smile. Professor McGonagall's frown deepened. Chapter 11_Platform and Train. After Shire and Hermione came back from Diagon Alley, they basically stayed in the Shire's garage, and they called it Special Research Group before Magic Enrollment. Started day-to-day study and practice, with the help of CL's previous life films and original books, and Hermione's natural attributes of being a scholar. The two really succeeded in learning a lot of magic. Compared with Hermione's comprehensive development, CL put more energy into transfiguration and spells. The advantage of this is that CL's transfiguration can basically turn a mouse into a beautiful cigarette case before school starts. Don't ask why it's not a snuff case, because CL doesn't know what a snuff case looks like. But looking at the snow-white cigarette case on the table, with the 3 characters of Joan Nanhai in blue and metallic luster, and a 5 mg sign below, Shire still showed a smug expression. Although Shire just made a porcelain cigarette case, Hermione didn't know what it was, so she thought that Shire's spell-casting failed, but seeing Shire's proud expression, Hermione had to look at it with the expression of a fool. Charles for a few days. Aside from CL's transfiguration, the spell started to give CL a headache. He used to be an ironclad muggle, but after he suddenly got the ability to cast spells, he had a magical wand and a systematic spell-casting textbook. It's hard to imagine how much enthusiasm Seal burst out. Moreover, the knowledge of magic is power, and the achievement feedback is very timely to learn, which directly transforms Seal into a super scholar with a deep love for magic. But, however, compared to Hermione's meticulous pure wizard magic, Seal's magic always makes people feel unexpectedly, such as the simplest floating spell. Under the actions and spells that the two seem to copy and paste, the quills beside them both successfully floated up, but the strange thing was that under Ciel's quill, a small whirlwind could still be faintly seen holding the quill, which made Hermione express that it was very strange. But Charles didn't care. Ciel doesn't care about strange magical performance. The result is the same. Ciel said it doesn't matter, and strange magical performance brings many strange benefits to Ciel. To give a simple example, when Ciel is flashing with fluorescent light, Ciel can control the brightness at any time, and can also make the light source turn into a flashlight and shine straight forward, not like the most original light bulb, which makes Hermione very happy. It's uncomfortable. After all, it's all the same spell. Why did you mutate sneakily? Charles said, I'm innocent. Finally, on the morning of August 30th, the two finished the Hogwarts first-grade textbooks that they had taught themselves countless times. Of course, the main reason is that she is going to the station tomorrow. The secondary reason is that Hermione has been staying in the garage with Ciel since she came back. Even if she occasionally comes home at night, she is exhausted. Going to bed, this made Mr. Granger, who was his daughter's slave, very uncomfortable. Thinking that it would be Christmas to meet again after school started, Mr. Granger said he couldn't accept it. So on the 30th he forced Hermione to take her home. After Hermione returned home, Ciel also quickly stated that he had a day off, after the two happily spent a day with their parents at home. On the morning of the 31st, the two gathered in the yard of Shire's house again. That's right, today is the day when the train departs, and it is also the beginning of their magical journey. Mr. William held a farewell ceremony in the yard for the two little wizards who were about to travel, and then the two put various large boxes into the trunk of Mr. William's car. In the car, the two muggles excitedly discussed everything about the wizarding world. Mr. William and Mr. Granger even read the history book that Shire had bought. The difference between magical animals caused the two ladies to roll their eyes frequently. Hermione seemed very nervous, and kept reciting, A History of Hogwarts, intending to better integrate into the magical world, rather than making herself seem so special. On the other hand, Ciel looks completely excited. After all, the opportunity to watch a movie on the spot is still immersive, which makes Ciel feel unreal, and even occasionally interrupts the discussion between the two adults. Noisily along the way, they finally arrived at King's Cross Station. The two adults fell into contemplation as they looked at the train tickets on platform 9 3/4 in their hands. They didn't know the existence of this platform. It was Charles, who was familiar with the plot, who pretended to play Sherlock Holmes once, analyzed the location of the station, and wanted to rush into the pillar. After observing for a while and confirming that it was true, the two families decided to let Shire and Hermione pass by themselves. After all, in Shire's analysis, they were not sure whether muggles could pass. In the case of leaving first, the little girl took a deep breath nervously, and then rushed over. Ciel was eager to try. After all, this scene seemed so miraculous in the original movie theater. Just as Ciel was pushing the car and was about to rush, Mr. Granger grabbed him. Charles. Mr. Granger stopped. Charles. Ciel looked at the middle-aged man with a worried expression. Promise me, take care of Hermione. Among her peers, she has only you as a good friend. Don't let her be bullied, okay? Mr. Langer spoke to Ciel in an almost supplicating tone. Don't worry, Hermione is a smart girl, it's not necessarily who bullies who. If you want to bully Hermione, you have to pass me first. Ciel patted his chest and said, it must be no problem, and then in Granger the gentleman rushed over the wall with a look of relief. You're so slow, are you scared? Mr. Naughty. Hermione seemed to have waited for a long time, looking at Ciel rushing over, she couldn't help teasing. Don't worry, Madam Know-it-all, I'm not the one rushing in front. The spirit of chivalry is always there. Seal gave a strange knightly salute, which made Hermione laugh. At this time, Seal was free to look at everything in front of him. The bustling crowd and the steaming red train made Seal excited. Dream, it's starting, Seal couldn't help but exclaim, and before Seal could continue to admire, he was pulled by Hermione and hurried into the car. At this time, Seal also reacted. He didn't want Hermione to have anything to do with the two useless men in the previous life, so he hurriedly pulled Hermione to the end of the carriage. He didn't want to encounter anyone looking for toads. Neville and the strange twin-eyed man, and the jealous red-haired incompetent man. Chapter 12-Unstoppable Encounter. When Shire finally found an empty carriage in the back of the train, and after helping Hermione put the suitcases away, Shire and Hermione finally had time to rest in peace. After mixing, Hermione took out 2 books and handed one to Seal, who looked at the cover. Transformation today. Where did you get it, Hermione? Seal said suspiciously. When I went to your house this morning, I saw it in the yard. It seems that the owl was not delivered to you, but was left in the yard and left. Hermione replied without looking up. Seal opened the book, looked at the school history in Hermione's hand again, shook his head decisively, and looked at the book in his hand. This magazine is basically equivalent to a Muggle nature magazine. It talks about the cutting-edge knowledge of transfiguration. Many bigwigs publish their research results on it, but many Seal can't understand it. After all, Seal's knowledge reserve is only first grade, but this did not delay Seal in writing it down as a knowledge reserve in the future. Strange to say, when he was in school in his previous life, asking Seal to recite a text could make him want to die, but he still stuttered in the end. But nowadays, when you read any magic book, you can basically remember it after reading it once. It's a bit of an unforgettable taste. Charles summarizes it as the charm of magic and the benefits of being a human being. Just when the two were immersed in their own world, the door of the carriage was pushed open. Hello, is there anyone here? The other carriages are full. A thin teenager with tattered glasses said. Before Seal could raise his head to speak, Hermione answered, No one, please come in. Seal glanced at Hermione suspiciously. Good guy, girl, are you trying to hide your nervousness by reading a book? Your answering speed is just like you didn't read a book. Seal shook his head and glanced at the little boy who had just come in. When he saw the lightning-like scar on his head, Seal almost pulled Hermione to change the carriage. FXXX, the world line is closed. The child whispered he muttered, but got up and helped the thin Harry Potter put the box away. Hello, my name is Hermione Granger, and this is my good friend Charles Lancaster. Hermione introduced him as soon as the boy across from him was ready to speak. The door of the carriage was pushed open again before little Harry, who had just finished speaking, could answer before he could answer. Hello, are there any vacancies here? The other carriages are full. A boy with red hair and freckles asked. Boy, I'm straight, what is this? The gears of fate are turning. Is the world line beginning to come to an end? Damn, even Neville omitted. The corner of Seal's mouth twitched, and he complained frantically in his heart, feeling very tired. Please come in, I think we still have a vacant seat. Seal replied helplessly, he couldn't drive people away, come here. After getting up and helping Ron put the box away, the 4-person tour began to introduce himself. Hermione repeated the introduction just now, and Ron also introduced himself. Finally, it was Harry's turn. Well, hello, my name is Harry Potter. He just finished speaking. Hermione and Ron almost screamed, and Hermione immediately repeated excitedly what book she had read about Harry description. Ron also expressed with excitement that he wanted to see Harry's scars. Harry showed Ron his scar with embarrassment, and then began to deal with Hermione cautiously. Seal stood by and prepared to speak. With the cover of the magazine, he smiled and looked at everything in front of him. Although it is true that I don't want to have any contact with these two, but I have already met, so wouldn't it be nice to just quietly watch the famous scene in front of me? Finally, when Ron couldn't help but ask Harry what kind of Voldemort he was, Charles laughed. Ron looked at Shire with shame and anger. What's so funny, Mr. Lancaster? No, 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 Ron, you can call me Seal. You can call me Seal too, Harry. I'm not laughing at you. I don't think Harry can remember what happened when he was a year old, did he? But regarding the appearance of the mysterious man, I have heard a little. Seal said to Ron with a smile on his face. They didn't call Voldemort's name directly. Harry didn't know, but Shawkes knew that now Voldemort is on the back of Quirrell's head at Hogwarts. He didn't dare to call his name directly, in case it was true like in fan novels. If Voldemort had enchanted his name, it would be terrifying to think about, and Seal didn't want to take that risk. But Seal's words successfully aroused the interest of the three. Even Harry was quite curious about this mysterious enemy. The three of them all looked at Seal seriously, waiting for what Seal would say next. Okay, I remember the description of the mysterious man in a book I read before. I don't remember it very clearly, but it is certain that the mysterious man has no nose. Seal replied with a smile. Hermione looked at Seal with a puzzled expression. She had read all of Seal's books. Could it be that Seal bought a new book secretly? Hermione expressed her doubts. Seeing the suspicious look of several people, Seal touched his nose and continued. Well, Ron may not know, but Harry and Hermione should know. According to legend, he has no nose, and there are two places where the nose should be. Holes like sockets. Quote. In Ron's puzzled look, Harry and Hermione laughed together, and after Harry finally explained to Ron what a two-hole socket was, Ron couldn't straighten his back with laughter. Gosh, if I lost my nose, I'd rather die where I am, Ron said. The relationship between the few people got closer a lot in this laughter, and the atmosphere reached a climax after the local tyrant Harry bought a cart of snacks at noon. At noon, a few people exchanged their meals. Charles thought that Ron's mother's corned beef sandwich was delicious, and Ron also praised Harry's snacks. Harry ate the Chinese bento made by Charles and lamented that he had never eaten it. Such delicious stuff. Only Hermione, honestly, happily ate the luxurious Chinese-style bento made by Shire, which was specially made by Shire for Hermione and her. Of course, Hermione was very happy. Famous in every family, but Seal is lazy, so he does it very little. Of course, happiness is always short-lived. Neville finally showed up in the afternoon and asked them if they had seen his toad. Hermione, who was full of justice, said at that time that he would take Neville to the remaining cars to take a good look, and said that if he didn't find it, he would send Neville back, and help Neville to keep an eye on it on the way back to see if he could find it. Seal didn't really want to move, but when Hermione spoke, Seal knew he couldn't run. So he was dragged out of the carriage by Hermione with a helpless face, and before leaving, he didn't forget to tell Ron to remember to change his clothes. Chapter 13_Bright Sun. A few minutes before the sun went down, Shire and Hermione finally returned to their box. After they tried their best to help Neville find the lost toad, they sent Neville to the box and started to walk back. In the process of looking for the toad, Seal was molested by many senior sisters because of his outstanding appearance, which made Hermione's face look unsightly at the time. After the search was fruitless, the two returned to the box and urged Harry and Luo after he changed his clothes. Seal began to complain about Neville's toad. Seal, who had experienced the explosion of information, was almost the same as the most popular talk show in the UK. The trio of Iron Triangle looked at Shaw. Er's stomach hurts from laughing at her performance. But as the sun gradually went down and the sky became darker and darker, Seal's good mood gradually disappeared, as did many of the same freshmen, especially the Muggle freshmen. After all, Muggle equipment can travel thousands of miles a day, or in the case of a stop, the steam train of Hogwarts is really a backward product of the last century in their eyes. Finally, the train announcement sounded, telling the students to leave their luggage in the carriage, and someone will be responsible for carrying it to the dormitory. They will arrive at the station soon, and I hope they have a pleasant journey and so on. Finally, after the sky was completely dark, the train slowly stopped. The crowd appeared on the platform, and Seal held Hermione's hand tightly to prevent them from getting separated. During the period, the mouth was not idle, and the express train of Hogwarts continued to output, which attracted almost a lot of small muggle wizards who had the same complaint to laugh. Of course, those so-called pure blood did not know how to laugh. Where is the point? Always looking at where Seal is spitting out the fragrance with a puzzled look on his face. Seal and a large group of freshmen finally approached the end of the platform, and after a long distance, he saw a tall figure shouting loudly with a big lantern. "First-year freshmen, come to me, first-year freshmen, come and gather here." Hagrid. Harry, who was behind Seal, saw the familiar Hagrid excitedly ran over to greet him, and greeted him, and enthusiastically introduced Seal and others to Hagrid, but Hagrid was working after all, so he hurriedly continued to maintain order without much communication. After Hagrid finally assembled all the freshmen, he began to lead them on foot. Hermione kept repeating the project by his side, crossing the jungle, taking a boat to the school, and completely recreating the road that the Big Four walked at that time. But when a group of 11-year-olds were walking down a wet, pitch-black path, and the only light source was the moon in the sky and the lamp in Hagrid's hand, there was always a daredevil who stumbled, but fortunately Hagrid took care of it. All freshmen will always pick up the little wizard who was about to wrestle in time. Finally, when Seal picked up Hermione who was about to fall for the third time, Seal couldn't bear the damn darkness anymore, and drew out his wand and a fluorescent flash came out. The faint white light illuminated everything around him like the moon, and also illuminated the damn path. Now it was much brighter, Hermione wouldn't wrestle anymore, and the two of them could move forward smoothly again. I thought that such a spell for lighting should be known by many people. Seal became the first person to break the tradition. There should be many little wizards, at least many pure-blooded little wizards to follow suit. Seal was greatly disappointed, and no light source came on again, except for Seal. This made Seal look at Hermione beside him in confusion. Hermione glanced at Seal, and answered without Seal asking, "Most little wizards put their wands in boxes, like the ones you carry with you all the time, are always in the minority, and especially in the first year. The professor specially instructed to leave all the items in the box when he left." Quote. Hermione rolled her eyes and replied that Seal's love for wands was almost inseparable for a moment, and he even made a wand holster around his waist so that Seal could pull out his wand like a sword. Seal expressed that he couldn't understand this. In Seal's cognition, the wand should be like a mobile phone, an existence that never leaves the body for a moment. Under Seal's erroneous estimation, many little wizards began to gather towards the only two artificial light sources. After all, no one wanted to be covered in mud when they fell on the dark path. When the people around him gathered more and more, it was almost crowded around Seal, and Seal struggled to grab Hermione's hand in the crowd. There will definitely be problems in this way. Seal thought of this, deciding not to hesitate. He had to think of a better way to keep himself and Hermione safe. So Seal thought of the little flame that he had never exercised since the diagonal came back, so he extinguished the light source at the tip of his wand, stood there and started to think of a way to restore the original feeling. The little wizard who lost the light soon disappeared from Seal. The side left, only Hermione looked at Seal suspiciously, as if wondering what Seal was doing. Finally, Seal found the feeling. Seal waved his wand and kept drawing a small circle on his head. Hermione was even more puzzled. At this time, some purebloods who had seen Seal unhappy just now were also pointing at their backs, especially it was a boy with a big platinum gold head and the loudest voice. Finally, in Seal's perception, the red dots converged into a small ball of light that wasn't very large, but it did not turn into a big fireball for lighting as Seal thought, which made Seal panic. Now, the searcher finally thinks that watching a movie in a previous life had a spell that seemed to ignite a flame. Seal didn't care so much. He pointed at the big red light ball in his censer with his wand and roared a blazing flame. A trace of fire ignited in the center of the red light ball in Seal's consciousness, and then it was like a fission reaction, and the entire light ball was quickly ignited. Hagrid led the freshmen to walk in front of him, and suddenly there was a flame spell that was almost roaring behind him, which scared Hagrid. If any freshman with a wand ignited the whole forest, Hagrid would definitely be stunned. Sent to Azkaban. But when Hagrid turned around and wanted to find the new student, A fireball the size of a car suddenly appeared in the sky, making Hagrid extremely nervous. He wasn't sure he could handle such a big fireball. Just when he was hesitant to ask the principal or professor to solve the problem, he was surprised to find that the fireball was burning so quietly above the team. With no intention of falling or exploding, Hagrid stopped and turned back. As he walked, he began to move forward with the new student. Under the light of the fireball, the originally dark and damp path seemed to be as warm and bright as day. Hermione's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you do it?" "Ha ha, I don't know either, but it's probably an enlarged version of those little magic tricks you've seen before." Seal scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. "Praise the great sun, let's go quickly, we will cross the lake as you said." Said this and pulled Hermione's hand, holding a wand in one hand, and controlling the fireball in the sky to move forward. Dare to go. Chapter 14 _ The Sorting Hat Test. What Charles didn't know at this time was that at the door of the Hogwarts Hall, Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall were standing together looking at the big fireball in the forest below. Dumbledore sighed. "Look, Minerva, this kind of flame that can be controlled that burns out of thin air without going out. This is the basis of elemental magic. This little guy obviously hasn't fully mastered it yet, and it seems that he still uses it. He uses magic to ignite the elements, but that's it. He also has a longer magic duration than wizards. It is the opposite of us. We are wizards and advanced wizards. He is a wizard who complements wizards. An enviable talent." Professor McGonagall pursed her lips, which made her look more serious. Instead of taking up Dumbledore's topic, she replied, "It's clear that he didn't follow your instructions and set foot on the path of the founder alone, and I carry a wand with me, and I use it with great swagger. I think this year's freshman, either I have a headache or Phileas has a headache." Quote. Dumbledore was obviously amused by this sentence, and after laughing lightly for a while, he patted Professor McGonagall's shoulder. "Go back, don't struggle, the students are coming, this year should be very lively. Don't worry about that kid. I set him some small tests, and if it's done I think I'll teach him personally, and Minerva, I think it's definitely not Phileas who's having a headache judging from his performance." Professor McGonagall sighed when she heard the words. "Gryffindor hasn't won the Academy Cup for many years, I hope he can be more honest." After that, the two turned around and returned to the lobby. McGonagall the professor carefully checked the layout of the auditorium again, and then turned around to welcome the students and freshmen of this year. The fireball, Seal and a group of little wizards finally walked through the woods without any danger and came to the Black Lake. Hagrid shouted at the top of his voice. The big fireball just now was also extinguished when Seal arrived at the dock, and maintaining the fireball for a long time made Seal, an 11-year-old Mono Reserve, somewhat bottomed out. With the help of Hermione, Seal and Hermione, Neville and an unknown freshman stepped into a small boat together. Before Seal was seated, there was a sound of fists and fists coming from the back of the crowd. Hagrid hurriedly walked over and pulled a few people away. Seal looked over curiously and saw Ron and a boy with platinum blonde hair sorting their clothes. Hagrid was helping to save Harry from the two little fat men. "Come out." "Well, I didn't expect that we didn't meet on the train, but we met on the boat." "Sure enough, the fateful entanglement is unavoidable. I don't know if there is a transformation potion in the magic world. If there is a Harry, then absolutely interesting. Snape versus Malfoy." Seal laughed out loud after thinking about it, and then attracted Hermione's strange eyes. She always felt that Seal became a little strange after contacting magic, and silently vowed in her heart that when school starts, she will definitely drag Seal to find the teacher to see. Don't go crazy. After a lot of noise, finally all the students got on the boat, and the next step was the traditional project of crossing the lake and climbing the stairs. At this time, Seal didn't have the energy to do anything else. The big fireball technique just now made Seal very uncomfortable. Tired. The troop that followed honestly climbed the stairs covered with moss, and when Seal finally stood at the gate, Seal was already exhausted, and at the same time his hungry chest pressed against his back. Hagrid raised his big hand and slapped the door hard. "This year's freshman, Professor McGonagall." A witch in an emerald green robe came out of the gate, looking serious. Okay Hagrid, please, just leave it to me. She nodded to Hagrid. Hello, my name is Minerva McGonagall. You will be living at Hogwarts for the next 7 years. We are about to have a sorting ceremony. Our house includes Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. You're all Hogwarts students, no matter what house you're in. After she finished speaking, her eyes swept over all the little wizards. Everyone was infected by the serious atmosphere, and unconsciously began to get nervous. Maybe she felt that the atmosphere was too tense. Professor McGonagall saw Ron. The one, sir. Your nose is a little dirty. If you don't want to lose face in the next sorting ceremony, I suggest you wipe it. After speaking, he turned and returned to the lobby. Ron hurriedly wiped his nose nervously, and then stood at attention. At this time, Harry pulled Ron. Do you know how we sort? Harry's tone was a little nervous, and Hermione beside him stopped reciting. A school history pricked up his ears to hear what Ron had to say. I don't know, but my brothers told me the sorting ceremony was difficult, like we were fighting something or something. After Ron finished speaking, there was a sound of air conditioning, and Seal was struggling to hold back his laughter. This kind of collective evil taste of wizards really suits Seal's appetite. Just when Seal was about to give the nervous little wizard around him a fire of fear, a scream interrupted Seal and saw ghosts floating out of the wall, some very enthusiastic, some very cold, and some of them were a fat monk invited Shire to Hufflepuff. Just when Seal was curious to poke the fat monk in front of him and study the composition of the ghost, Professor McGonagall came out again. Now, make a line and follow me. Professor McGonagall said. Everyone consciously made a line and followed Professor McGonagall into the auditorium. Charles looked at the countless candles under the stars, like a dream. Shire really felt like he was dreaming, until Professor McGonagall interrupted Shire's reverie. The person I called by name came forward, put on the hat, and the sorting hat will decide your house. Professor McGonagall heard Ron whisper, "Damn Fred and George, what they said. As if we were going to fight trolls." Hannah Abbott. Hufflepuffs. Well, the Iron Hannah appeared. Seal smiled and looked at everything in front of him. He looked at Malfoy's hat and shouted Slytherin before he put it on. Hermione stepped forward to the hat and was silent for a while before saying Gryffindor. Hal Lippett is assigned to Gryffindor, and the twins are shouting that we have Potter. Finally, Professor McGonagall called his name, and Seal walked up calmly, putting on his hat. Oh, how long has it been since I saw the Son of Elements? I think about it, it's been 1,000 years. A deep male voice sounded in his ear. Seal thought curiously, what is the child of the element? Why haven't I heard of this thing? Oh, you seem to be curious about your talent, so let me give you a task, and when you finish it, I'll tell you how. The sorting hat continued whispering in her ear. Wait, you can see what I'm thinking. Legilimency. Seal panicked. After all, no one wants to have their brains read casually. No, don't panic. I don't know any legilimency. My branch is based on the color of the soul. Everyone has a suitable color. I can only roughly see what you are thinking, but it's not a legitimacy. Read. The sorting hat continued in Charles's ear. Then to continue the topic, do you want to know your talent? Seal expressed surprise. After all, Seal always believed that the pinnacle of his talent was electric fans and lighters. Like the fireball just now, it looked very intimidating. In fact, any ordinary muggle can turn this big fireball for lighting with a pebble. The split splits away. Okay, you succeeded in impressing me. What mission? Charles expressed his curiosity. After the sorting is over, you have to enter the principal's room and take me with you secretly. That's easy, isn't it? Said the sorting hat. At this time, 10,000 wild horses galloped past in Shire's heart, stealing from the eyes of the old bee. This is afraid that the old birthday star eats arsenic and thinks that he has lived too long. Oh, don't be nervous, let me give you a little tip. You can go to the kitchen first, maybe you will get help. The sorting hat didn't seem to say so much for a long time, and seemed very happy. Then let me see where you're going, let me see, Follow that little Hermione girl. Puppy love sucks, boy, what? Must go. Well, someone with great talent always deserves it. A little privilege, isn't it? In fact, a naughty person like you can only go anywhere. The Sorting Hat pondered for a while and then shouted. Gryffindor. Chapter 15 First Night at Hogwarts. After hearing about the sorting, Charles took off the sorting hat and put it on the stool with satisfaction, and happily ran to Hermione's side and sat down. As for what the sorting hat said about the test, Shire has not been too concerned about it. It is not that there is no chance, but the time has not yet come. After all, when the old bee is still in school, it is not a wise choice to sneak into the principal's office. Once discovered by an old bee, the loss outweighs the gain. Just as Seal was distracted, the sorting ceremony ended when the sorting hat shouted out Hufflepuff. Professor McGonagall picked up the sorting hat and four-footed stirrups and retreated into the hall behind the professor. Under the hungry waiting of the little wizards, Headmaster Dumbledore stood up. Looking at the hungry little wizards with a smile on their faces. "Welcome," he said, "welcome to Hogwarts and the new school year, and before the banquet, I want to say a few words, that's idiots. Cry noses, scum, screw, thank you all, eat now." He sat down again, everyone cheered and applauded, the empty table was suddenly filled with food, the grilled chicken legs were piled up like a hill, all kinds of grilled meat, vegetables and pumpkin juice suddenly appeared on the table, let Charles feel in his heart. Sighed that house elves are awesome, and then started to gobble up like other little wizards. After all, Seal consumed a lot of energy on the way here, and he was eating happily at this time. Of course, he didn't forget to get a few drumsticks and steaks for Hermione, who was contemplating. "Charles, what did the headmaster mean by the opening speech, do you know?" Hermione was a little confused. As the greatest white wizard of the time described in the book, for Hermione, she believed that Dumbledore had a deeper meaning. The meaning of. Before Charles could answer, a voice sounded, "Hey, leave him alone, he's a little crazy. If you don't eat it, you won't have any food later. You don't want to go to bed hungry on the first night of school." It was Ron. At this time, he was holding a chicken leg with both hands and one hand, and his mouth was full of oil. Of course, the others were not much better. Hermione was still a little tangled, but she also picked up the knife and fork and began to eat slowly. Ciel's mouth was full of food. After a while, he finally swallowed all the food. Looking at Hermione's tangle, he remembered his previous life. The interpretation of the fanfiction. After thinking about it, he replied, "Well, I think it may be described as an academy, and then this is a blessing." Blessings. The little wizard who heard Ciel's words in the vicinity was also interested, all staring at Ciel, waiting for Ciel's next answer. Well, idiots mean Ravenclaw, because they see the other three houses as idiots. Crying means we. After all, in brave Gryffindor, the other three houses are too wailing. The residue means Slytherin. In the eyes of them who are poisoned by the pure blood theory, the other three academies are basically scum. He's talking about Hufflepuffs, and to them, we and Ravenclaw look pretty snarky. Of course if you write these 4 words in Latin, then switch the order. Saying that, Seal took out his wand, simply gathered some fire elements, and slowly wrote 4 words in the air. Then, with a wave of his hand, 4 Latin words composed of flames were converted into another sentence. "May Merlin bless you." Harry read out the words composed of flames in the air, and the Gryffindor side seemed to be quiet for a moment. "Hey, you should go to Ravenclaw." One of the twins said. "Yeah, Gryffindor doesn't think that much," said the other. "Come on, let's eat quickly, I don't want to go hungry in the middle of the night." Charles put away his wand and waved, dispersing the flame text on it, and the hall became lively again. The little wizards began to introduce themselves. Hermione was getting after the answer. He was satisfied and started to eat. Charles, who turned into a cook, glanced at Dumbledore in the gap, and saw him pick up the wine glass, like Charles toasting a glass of wine from a distance, and Charles also raised the chicken leg in his hand in return, which made Deng amused. Bully laughed. Finally, after everyone was full, the food on the table suddenly disappeared, replaced by piles of desserts. Everyone cheered, eating and taking. Even Hermione took a few desserts and put them in her pocket. After all, as the daughter of a family dentist, it was too difficult to eat something sweet. The most extreme is Seal. He actually calmly took out a neatly folded paper bag from his pocket, and then began to take it without any hesitation. The move elicited a thumbs up from the twins. One thing to say, Charles really thinks that the level of British cooking is not very good, and all the cooking points are on desserts. Finally, desserts disappeared too. Dumbledore stood up. Now, I think everyone is full. Of course, it doesn't matter if you are not full. I believe your friends brought a lot of desserts for you to go back to the dormitory to fill your stomach. With laughter, Charles looked at his nose and heart, and didn't look at Dumbledore at all. I want to say a few words to everyone before everyone goes back to the bedrooms, Dumbledore continued. According to Mr. Filch's request, it is forbidden to release magic in the corridor. There are 434 specific prohibitions. Those who are interested can visit his office. In the forest next to the playground, no one is allowed to enter. After that, he glanced at Gemini. Also, the Quidditch review will start in the second week of this term, and interested students can go to Mrs. Hodge to sign up. Finally, and most importantly, anyone who does not want to suffer an accident and die in pain, please do not enter the corridor on the right on the 4th floor. Come, Dumbledore's Harry development plan. Seal is not interested in it at all. It's like playing a game to know the level. Instead of playing a level game that knows the strategy, it is better to go to the principal's office to steal it thrill from the hat. Finally, after everyone sang the school song, the banquet was over, and the prefect began to lead everyone to the dormitory. Seal looked at the stairs that changed at will, and the nominally 8th floor, but in reality going to the dormitory of unknown height. Seal suddenly regretted going to Gryffindor. After everyone encountered Peeves, they finally climbed up to the 8th floor to pass the portrait, finally returned to the dormitory, put the dessert bag in her hand to Hermione, and told her to eat when she was hungry. Seal took a tired body. Lying on the bed, there were so many thoughts in my head that it was difficult to fall asleep for a while. All he could think about were the tasks that the Sorting Hat told Seal, and the name of his son of the elements, and finally the kitchen that the Sorting Hat said. When I think of the kitchen, I think of today's dinner, all kinds of grilled meat and fried fish. As a person from the Celestial Empire in his bones, Shower actually wanted to go to the kitchen and become a chef. The night gradually deepened, and Seal also fell asleep slowly under his wild thoughts. The first night at Hogwarts was peaceful and serene. Chapter 16 Charles who is addicted to learning. The next morning, Shower got up quite early. Thanks to his years of habit of exercising and his precise biological clock, Shower had no sequelae of being overworked. Seeing Neville and 2 unknown roommates beside him, Seal shook his head and dismissed his plan to call them. After washing up, Seal appeared in the rest room refreshed. Hermione was already sitting in front of the sofa in the lounge looking at the textbook in her hand. "Morning, Hermione, you're up early," Charles greeted. "Morning, Seal, I thought you would sleep longer. I see that you looked very tired last night." Hermione seemed to be in a good mood, and replied to Seal with a smile, and Seal blushed a little. Mim's words of tiger and wolf, Shower was a little crooked for a moment. After shaking his head and dispelling the unhealthy thoughts in his head, Seal began to drag Hermione to the hall. After all, Seal wanted to drag Hermione to exercise and read a book after dinner. The little girl's body too weak, let's exercise. The two climbed over the portrait of the fat lady, and Charles saw the densely packed stairs again, and instantly began to have a bit of laziness. He didn't remember that the prefect said last night that those stairs need to be skipped and those need to wait. So Seal thought of some of the cowardly actions of his previous life, and touched his pocket. There was a small bread, so Seal threw it down, and slowed down before confirming that the bread really hit the ground. Seal took out his wand and climbed over the railing to stand. Just when Hermione wondered why Seal was so quiet, she turned around and saw Seal standing outside the railing with a wand in his hand, which frightened Hermione, and hurriedly stepped forward to hold Seal. "Charles, what are you doing? It's very dangerous, come back quickly," Hermione said anxiously, clutching Charlie's clothes tightly, for fear that Charles would be gone if she let go. "Relax, Hermione, you are a wizard now, and this is not an ordinary world. Relax, I tried it just now, Hogwarts won't let its students fall to death. Use the deceleration magic below, and we have also learned the levitating technique. Don't worry, I will try it first. You are coming, of course, you can also go down. Don't worry, it's alright, just like the jumping machine we used to go to the amusement park." Charles comforted Hermione, and these remarks successfully persuaded Hermione. Even if Hermione loved learning, she was still a Gryffindor, and her love of adventure was also the spirit of her bones. But she still didn't let go. "No Shire, this will violate the school rules and will be deducted points." Seal looked at Hermione, rubbed Hermione's head suddenly, and answered her with a smile. "Miss Jack of all trades, let me tell you one thing. When you look closely at the rules of Hogwarts, you will know that there is only one rule of Hogwarts, and that is don't get caught. As long as you don't get caught, then I didn't violate the school rules. It's morning and many people didn't get up, don't worry." In the end, Hermione was persuaded. She knew Seal too well, and the mischievous Seal would never let go of the opportunity to be lazy. So, Hermione's last request was to dance with her. She was really afraid of losing Seal, even in the wizarding world. Seal smiled and looked at the girl who was trembling with fear, but still stood beside him. He comforted, "Don't worry, when will I cause you an accident?" Hermione nodded, still afraid to speak. After Seal cast a floating spell on the two of them, they hugged Hermione and jumped down like that. It landed safely on the ground, without even feeling any pain, as if he was gently caught and placed on the ground at the end. Seal was not surprised, but Hermione in her arms was terrified. After a long time, it seemed that he finally recovered, and then came the excitement, like a child who found a new toy, pulling Seal and talking continuously. Finally came to the hall, and Hermione stopped. There was no one in the hall, and the two of them could be regarded as the first to come. After sitting down, a breakfast appeared in front of the two of them. In the nth time that Shire sighed that the elf was really good, the two finished breakfast. Hermione, who was planning to go to the library to read books after dinner, was dragged by Seal to the playground to start a morning running exercise before she could act. Under the argument that Seal's body was the foundation of learning, Hermione helplessly followed Seal. After some simple morning exercises, the two went to the library to immerse themselves in the ocean of knowledge before the first transfiguration class. To be honest, Seal is completely addicted at this time, and the timely feedback of magic achievements always makes Seal unable to stop. Compared with Hermione's comprehensive development, Seal prefers transfiguration and magic spells. As for magic patterns and potions, Shire prefers or has not been contacted yet to comment. But the transformation and the spell Char are intoxicated. In Char's cognition, magic should be fireballs, water dragons, and giant stone men, not like the two-hole socket man, who constantly eats big melons. As for black magic, Seal can learn or not learn too much. Of course, it is like eating a big melon. He can create a Horcrux unintentionally, and can also attack himself. Seal is always blacklisted. Even some Char who can affect the mind and some undead nature do not intend to touch it. The black magic that appeared in the original book, the one who showed interest in the Char is fiery. Compared to black magic, as a science student in his previous life, Seal was more interested in the essence of magic, that is, its origin. This theory can be extended to many questions: why Dumbledore and Grindelwald can have such a huge amount of magic, but other old wizards of the same age can't. These are all of Shire's interest. As for what the original book said about growing with age, Seal felt that it was pure nonsense. If it was true, then Dumbledore should have mass-produced it. You must know that the stronger the magic power, the more magic you use, the greater the power. With age, the old people in the world are all big hands. Voldemort and Grindelwald would have died a long time ago. Sure enough, Rowling is a book writer, and she knows shit magic. Seal was holding the second grade Transfiguration book in his hand, and he was really fascinated by it. From time to time, he wrote something in the notebook he carried with him. Mrs. Pants from the library, from time to time, looked at these 2 first days of school. The freshmen who came to the library seemed to be afraid that they would damage her beloved book. Finally, when Seal was addicted to studying and couldn't extricate herself, Hermione stood up, looked at the mechanical watch on her wrist that Seal had given her on her birthday, and pulled Seal up, under Mrs. Pants's gaze. Said in a low voice that the first class was about to start, and they might be late if they didn't leave. The 2 hurriedly rented the books they were reading from the librarian, then picked up their school bags and hurried away. Chapter 17 _ Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration. Seeing Hermione's hurried look, Seal thought that he was going to be late for class, and Seal didn't want to enjoy the treatment of Harry's being late. So under the frantic rush of the 2 little ones, they finally came to the door of the classroom. When Seal pushed open the classroom door nervously, Seal was ready to be criticized by Professor McGonagall and stared at by all Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs. In the end, what I saw was a classroom with few people, and a tabby cat squatting on the podium. Seal's mouth twitched, looking at Hermione behind him. Is that what you said about being late? Hermione looked as usual. Yes, class starts in 15 minutes. If we don't come earlier, we won't be able to grab the seats in the front row. Hermione was about to bypass Shire and enter the classroom. As soon as she walked into the classroom, Hermione saw a tabby cat sitting on the podium. As a cat lover, Hermione even dared to go up and pet the kitten. Could do anything. He was pulled back by Seal, and then Seal looked at Hermione helplessly, then bowed to the cat formally. I'm very sorry, Hermione didn't know. Pull Hermione to find a seat in the front row and sit down. Hermione was bewildered, and kept asking why she had to apologize to a cat. Seal didn't answer, but looked at Hermione with a wretched smile. That's right, Seal's bad taste came again. I'd love to see Hermione's overwhelmed expression when Professor McGonagall becomes a human, and whether she'll feel ashamed for the thought of trying to slap Professor McGonagall. Hermione didn't answer her when she saw Seal, but looked at her with a teasing expression. After staying with Seal for a long time, she instantly understood that Seal was definitely not holding back at this time. Fool by. So she stopped asking Seal, and after snorting, she opened the Transfiguration textbook and began to read it. Time passed, and the little wizards in the front row, including Shire, began to look at their textbooks. After all, as a school district, no one wants to start the class without previewing. The remaining little wizards walked into the classroom in 2s and 3s before the bell. Finally, at the last moment, Harry and Ron rushed into the classroom in a hurry, and they were finally together. The 2 of them were lamenting that the professor had not come yet, so they could avoid being criticized. The tabby cat on the podium jumped forward and turned into Professor McGonagall. After threatening to turn one of them into an alarm clock and the other into a map next time they are late, they asked them to find a place to sit. And Hermione, who witnessed the transformation from a cat to a human, had grown her mouth at this time, and finally reacted, which was unscientific but very magical. I'm also very glad that Seal pulled her, or else he would have slapped his own dean. It's scary to think about. Mr. Seal, it's great, you recognized me before the class started, can I ask why? Professor McGonagall returned to the podium and looked at Seal. Professor McGonagall, you are one of the 7 animagus registered in this century, and your form is a tabby cat. I saw it in the history book. I was not sure at first, but I saw your cat form. There are spectacle-like patterns under his eyes, I guess it's you. Charles stood up and said seriously, he didn't have time to observe cats. He did know about Professor McGonagall's registration, but the whole school was so there are many cats, how could he know that? It is purely a plot kill. Very careful observation. Gryffindor adds a point. No freshman can see my transfiguration for a long time. Professor McGonagall looked at Seal with satisfaction, and then continued. My transfiguration just now is the most dangerous and complicated in the entire transfiguration. I don't want you to try it rashly before you learn the knowledge, because transfiguration will be the most dangerous thing you will come across in the entire Hogwarts. The most complex subject. Professor McGonagall waved his wand and turned the podium into a pig, and then back again. This move obviously shocked all the little wizards, and then Professor McGonagall started the first class for freshmen, and large sections of theories were written on the blackboard. Shire was fascinated by it. He had to say Hogwarts. The quality of teaching is high. There were still many mistakes that Seal made when he studied Transfiguration alone at home. With Professor McGonagall's constant explanation, he understood the whole story at once. Seal happily took notes while looking at the various questions he had annotated in his textbook. Seal made up his mind that he would not let Professor McGonagall go. The goal is pinned on Transfiguration. After Professor McGonagall finally finished explaining, he gave each of the little wizards a match and began to practice, asking the little wizards to turn the match into a needle. When everyone is full of theories, it is not easy until they are ready to do it. Simply put, it is a typical brain that knows how to do it brain. I know it, no problem. Hand, what are you talking about? At this point the little wizards began to wave their wands. Ron swung so much that he almost swung his wand like a one-handed sword. Harry's wand was firmly against the match, his face was flushed, and the matches of the two of them didn't change. Seamus in the back row waved his wand again, and the whole match exploded instantly, sending out a plume of smoke. Professor McGonagall hurried over to take care of Mr. Seamus, who was transformed from a European to an African. And then gave him a match again. The noisy deformation sounds in the classroom did not seem to affect Seal, and Seal is now extremely curious, if it is a simple element, whether it can be deformed, such as water into ice, or out of thin air, deforming air. After thinking about it, Seal became addicted to it, and even began to experiment continuously. Finally, Professor McGonagall realized that something was wrong. Although she hadn't seen the threshold of the element mage, she could still do it simply by sensing. At the moment when Seal tried the elemental transformation, Professor McGonagall immediately went behind Seal and patted Seal on the shoulder, which directly interrupted Seal's meditation. It failed at the beginning. Mr. Shire, I don't want to make any attempts beyond the curriculum. You should concentrate on the match in front of you. Professor McGonagall is very serious. The realm above the wizard is very rare, and you can stay. His knowledge is even more pitiful. He was not sure whether Ciel's attempt would cause any unforeseen consequences, so he had to interrupt Ciel's meditation. Ciel also seemed to know what he had done, scratched his head and looked at Professor McGonagall, smiling awkwardly. Then he picked up the wand very seriously, and turned the match in front of him into a needle at once. Excellent transformation. Gryffindor plus 10 points. Professor McGonagall finally smiled with satisfaction. Then he walked away to instruct the other little wizards. How did you do it? Hermione finally couldn't help it. Looking at Ciel, she tried her best to make the match a little sharper. Willpower, you have to believe in yourself, believe that matches can definitely be turned into needles. Hermione, many wizards' magic is the embodiment of willpower. Think about your first magic explosion, believe in yourself, and mobilize willpower. Ciel looked at Hermione and answered seriously. Hermione sat back and pondered for a while, then her eyes became firm, and she waved her wand at the match, which suddenly turned into a silvery needle. Excellent transfiguration. Miss Granger is the second to complete it, and Gryffindor adds 5 points. Professor McGonagall smiled happily at the two of them. After the last class, only Hermione and Ciel completed the transformation. After Professor McGonagall left their homework, the students started to eat in the hall in 2s and 3s, preparing for the legendary potions class in the afternoon. Chapter 18 _ Potions and Duels. After eating at noon, the little lions hurriedly started to go underground. The potions class was in the basement. The little lions felt gloomy and cold as soon as they walked in. The bottles and jars on the wall were filled with various creatures. It seems that the already cold temperature has dropped a few degrees. Because everyone knew Professor Snape's name in advance, the little lions ignored the ridicule of the little snakes and acted obediently. Seal also sat beside Hermione obediently, trying to be in the same group as Schweba. Regarding Snape, Shire can only say that he neither hates nor likes him. In Shire's view, he is undoubtedly great. He guarded Harry to the last moment of his life, and he never betrayed Harry even when he died. Once. But this man's awkward character eventually made him commit the mistake of repenting his whole life when he was young. The old poisonous tongue and the arrogance of death have not changed until death, but Seal recognizes his loyalty and belief. Finally, the class bell rang, and Professor Snape seemed to have been drifting into the classroom with a huge bat. He had an aquiline nose, and his complexion was a little pale, probably due to the fact that he had been brewing potions in the basement for a long time and couldn't get the sun, and his hair was as greasy as the original description. A pair of eyes were full of coldness, and Seal knew that this was the performance of occlumency. With a long talk about potion brewing glory, Snape successfully shocked all the little wizards present, including those from Snake House. Although Seal knew that what Professor Snape said was true, Seal was still the reason for being insensitive to potions is very simple. Seal is extremely afraid of bugs, not to mention slugs, even slightly larger flies. Seal expresses disgust at this. Finally Snape walked over to Harry Potter and looked at the boy in front of him. Yes, another famous boy is sitting here, then Potter. Snape looked at Harry, startling the boy jump and slowly stand up. What do you get when you add powdered narcissus root to a wormwood infusion? Snape looked at Harry. Come, famous scene. Shire was very excited. I don't know, sir. Harry was a little embarrassed. If you were looking for a piece of bezoar, where would you find it? Mr. I don't know. Harry felt Snape embarrassing him. What's the difference between the boat-shaped aconite and the wolf poison aconite? I don't know, sir, but I think Hermione knows. Why don't you ask her? Harry said angrily. Sit down. Gryffindor deducts 10 points. It seems that fame does not mean anything. Let me tell you, life and death, cows' stomachs are full of aconite. Why don't you write this down? Snape growled said, completely ignoring Hermione, who was holding a very tall hand beside him. Seal grabbed Hermione and quietly let Hermione down, and said that Snape would not ask you to answer questions. Hermione expressed anger at this. There was no more famous scene after that, Neville blowing up the cauldron, and Snape roaring to deduct points from Gryffindor. Seal also wished to be in the same group with Hermione. Apparently, Hermione also knew about Ciel's quirks, and she did all the work of dealing with insects. Finally, the little lions who received Snape's venom spray all afternoon, after paying the price of 20 points, walked out of the potions classroom. Harry sullenly complained to Ron about Snape's prejudice against him. Seal didn't answer, but in his heart he complained about the stupid things that Daddy Harry did. However, 4 people could handle Snape, and he didn't know who it was. Before Seal finished complaining, Hermione dragged him to the library and began to indulge in the sea of magic. In the weeks that followed, Seal earned a lot of bonus points for his classes in Charms and Transfiguration. The most surprising thing is that Seal is actually very clear about the boring and meaningless history of magic. Even if he doesn't take notes and sleep in class, he can still finish the professor's history of magic homework very beautifully. Of course, compared to Hermione, that's incomparable. Full Bloom is no joke. Except for the potions class, Hermione couldn't get points without that class. So the combination of Shire's partial science master and Hermione's true master of science spread in Gryffindor. At first, Seal didn't care. It's normal for the little lions who like to do things. It's normal to have a nickname. Seal said it's okay to ignore it, but Hermione was deeply disturbed by it. Homework and notes, Hermione's character is unavoidable to nag. On the other hand, Seal asks questions and always answers, borrows homework and notes, and Seal also gives them away with a smile. Over time, many people understand, only if Seal is not good at it, go to Hermione again. It didn't make Hermione as ostracized as she used to be. The winter days are getting closer and the weather is getting colder day by day. Seal always pulls Hermione the cat on the big sofa next to the fire and reads the magic book without a name. Over time, this seat will soon become theirs. There is an exclusive seat, even if it is full of people around the stove, no one sits. This day, after giving out the password for the prefect's bathroom, Seal sneaked in to take a good bath while no one was there at night, and just came out, just as Seal leaned on his exclusive sofa in a refreshing mood to prepare while the fire was still warm. He was warming himself up and going to bed, when the door of the common room was suddenly pushed open from the outside, and the cold wind instantly woke up Seal, who was in a daze. He took out his wand and pointed at the door. After a while Hermione ran in from outside with her useless two men and Neville. "Is it curfew now? What are you doing?" Seal was a little puzzled. Hermione was quite surprised, watching Seal hurry to him. "Where have you been? Neville didn't find you." Seal was at a loss for words for a moment, and he didn't know how to answer, so he had to say haha and said he went to take a shower. Seeing Seal's dry hair, Hermione obviously believed it, and then began to educate Harry and Ron about the midnight duel incident. Seal suddenly realized that it was time for them to discover the three-headed dog. Seeing Hermione babbling on, Seal glanced at Ron and Harry helplessly and apologetically. Perhaps it was because of Seal's easy talkativeness that Harry and Ron saved face, and instead of refuting anything, he pulled Naruto. Wei turned and went back to his bedroom. Seal looked at Hermione, who was a little angry, and touched the brown bun's hair, which was almost taller than him, and comforted, "Don't be angry, I think they have learned their lesson, haven't they?" Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. Even though they are the same age, they are so naive to believe Malfoy's words. That's true. Hermione was also helpless. Charles suddenly smiled happily. "Hermione, you can't treat everyone like me. Treat Harry and Ron. You can subtract 5 or 6 years from their age. You're seeing if they're much more pleasing to the eye." Hermione thought for a while and burst out laughing, and then began to instruct Seal. "Well, that's what happened. Seal, go to bed early, it's already late. If you don't sleep, you'll get up tomorrow." "Not coming." "Okay, go to sleep, I'll dry my hair and go to sleep." Charles replied softly without any impatience. Then he watched Hermione disappear on the stairs of the girls' dormitory. The moment Hermione disappeared, Seal's face immediately turned cold. The happy magic study almost made Seal forget what happened to Hermione on Halloween. It stands to reason that Hermione would not suffer any danger, but Seal was not so relieved. Maybe it's time to prepare. Seal muttered. There was a terrifying 4-color light in his eyes. Chapter 19_Charles Who Wants Power. In fact, before the start of school, Shire was still very anxious. After all, the first year of Hogwarts was the safest and most dangerous year. After all, it was the year to face Voldemort, and it was also the only year Voldemort had a nose. There is still Hermione facing trolls in 1 year. If it is really according to the movie, it will be fine, but Seal is afraid that if there is a butterfly effect, it will be really cool. Seal really does not want any accident to the people around him. For this reason, Seal even thought of using some explosives to deal with possible accidents. In fact, Seal did too, but unfortunately, Hogwarts not only completely blocked the electronic products in the Muggle world, but even the technology side. The product also has a large shield, and the explosives that can blow up a house are not much different from a section of firecrackers. It is said that Peeves got a large number of Muggle cannons a long time ago, causing a lot of trouble, which caused the later principals to strengthen the shielding for safety. For this, Charles cursed for a long time. Although after entering the school and starting to study, the mysterious magic began to make Seal, who was addicted to learning, subconsciously ignore the danger in front of him. Now, Hermione still participated in the duel between the 3 little ones and Malfoy, which reminded Seal all of a sudden the dangers of the first year. It also started to make Charles anxious again. It's hard to do, even if the life-suppressing spell is really used at the last moment. It is estimated that according to the urine of the 2-hole socket man, it is still impossible to kill him. Besides, there are trolls. Charles looked at the bonfire in front of him, and began to thought-storm. It's not that Seal didn't think about taking Hermione away from danger, but at present, according to Hermione's character, this matter is not easy to handle, and Seal doesn't dare to let the plot deviate too much. the original plot can be said, in the end, it is the existence that dances on the tip of the knife. If it deviates too much, even with the intervention of Seal, in case of any accident, Seal will probably regret it for the rest of his life. At this time, Seal began to yearn for great power incomparably. For nothing else, I just hope that the people around me can survive the danger safely. Seal didn't want his future to be the way old Deng looked at the magic mirror and regretted his sister's death and the departure of his lover. After thinking about it for a long time, Seal finally thought about what the Sorting Hat said to him about the Son of Elements. After all, this thing is not available in the original book, and the only way for Seal to quickly improve his strength may be hidden in this new concept. After considering the task of the Sorting Hat, Seal began to make a series of plans. The first was the venue where he needed to practice. Seal still understood the truth that a pig can eat a tiger. First of all, the room of requirement has to go. It's a good practice place when Harry doesn't have to do Dumbledore's army training. Second is allies and strength. Right up. In Ciel's plan, the strongest ally must be Lao Deng, but there is a big problem. In the first year, Lao Deng set up to test Harry, and Lao Deng himself could not help Ciel to break his own settings. The test, and Shire couldn't let old Dengping help him protect himself and his family for no reason. So under Ciel's hard thinking, Ciel found a blind spot, the house elf in the kitchen. Powerful, unobtrusive, with a spell-casting ability no weaker than a wizard's, and a quick shifting movement. Perfect teammates, combined with the Sorting Hat's reminder in the Ciel sorting, Ciel felt that his trip to the kitchen seemed to be ahead of schedule. Thinking of the kitchen, Ciel recalled the breadth and depth of Chinese cuisine in his previous life. Maybe, I can try to get some different benefits. Ciel wiped the corner of his mouth and said, confirming his weekend trip to the kitchen. Even if he couldn't really find the Sorting Hat hint in the kitchen, Ciel felt the need to go. Of course, it wasn't that Ciel didn't have a plan B at all. If there was really no way, Ciel might really take the risk and find a way to attract Lao Deng himself to really steal a wave of Sorting Hats. The perfect way might be when old Deng and Harry were looking in the mirror, but after Halloween, Ciel wasn't sure if he could actually do a troll, and if Ron didn't have that magical levitating spell, he thought. Even if you add him, you can only bring them food. After thinking about it a lot, Ciel closed the small notebook in his hand, tidied up and prepared to go back to the dormitory to go to bed. Ciel in the kitchen made up his mind to go again on the weekend, and Ciel who was traveling at night would never do it. When is the time? It's not as good as going to the prefect's big bathroom to take a comfortable bath. It must be said that in his previous life, as a northerner of the Celestial Empire, Ciel was deeply in love with the fact that he took a bath. Glancing at the mechanical watch on his wrist, Ciel quickened his pace. After all, tomorrow is not a weekend. Ciel still has a lot of classes to attend tomorrow. He has to go to the library to look at other books. The price of books can make Charles feel distressed for a long time. Finally, Ciel left his exclusive sofa and walked to the bedroom with an unfinished book in his blanket. Ciel didn't notice that in the dark corridor leading to the women's bedroom, there was a brown hairball looking at Ciel. It was Hermione. The little girl is smart. Hermione knew from before the start of school that something was worrying about Ciel, and at the same time made Ciel very scared, but no matter how she hinted or made it clear, Ciel never told her that until after the school started. Ciel and her performed very well, and Ciel also gradually began to indulge in mysterious magic, as if he had forgotten the thing that made Ciel anxious, and a happy smile appeared on Ciel's face again. This made Hermione very happy. After all, as her only friend, good neighbor, and childhood sweetheart, Charles still held a very important position in Hermione's heart. But until the end of the day, after I participated in Harry's ridiculous duel, when I saw the three-headed dog guarding something, and after returning to the dormitory and telling Ciel about this, Ciel's brows began to wrinkle again. A familiar sense of anxiety began to surround Ciel again. Hermione was just being stupid, and she knew what Ciel knew, from the beginning, but Ciel chose to bear it alone, which made the self-esteemed little girl very unconvinced and worried about Ciel. So after pretending to return to the dormitory, he began to observe Seal silently at the entrance of the stairs. After Seal finally returned to the bedroom, Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. Although she didn't know what Seal knew, she still cared about Seal. But the little girl was still very curious about what was written in Seal's small book. She could see that all of Seal's troubles should be in that small book, and looking at Seal's last expression, she knew that Sha'ur was familiar with him. Had a solution, but she was still curious about what was written in that little book. Sooner or later, let you show me, stinky Seal, Hermione muttered, and after seeing Seal completely disappearing into the corridor of the boys' bedroom, she turned around and went back to her bedroom. Chapter 20 Weekend Hogwarts Adventure. The busy week finally came to an end, and Seal ushered in a happy weekend. After telling Hermione in advance that he would not go to the library this weekend, he decided to be a qualified Gryffindor to explore the castle and combine work and rest. Hermione was also very relieved to let Seal explore, and said to pay attention to safety. So Shire got up early in the morning when everyone was sleeping late. After washing and exercising necessary, Shire started today's Hogwarts adventure. The first one is of course the legendary House of Requirement. Of course, the main reason is because Gryffindor's bedroom is in the tower, and Charles really doesn't want to go downstairs and go upstairs. So Charles put on the children's version of the British military training uniform that Mrs. William had bought for a long time, brought the multifunctional survival dagger that had been hidden in the box, and the quick pulling stick cover made by himself and inserted the wand. Seal looked at himself in the mirror with satisfaction, and felt that he could definitely punch Loudang, kick Grindelwald, and deal with the two-hole socket man by the way. Shaking his head to dispel the self-expansion in his mind, Seal put on the robe representing Hogwarts, and then came to the 8th floor of the castle and began to hang out. As he was walking, he saw an ugly stone sculpture at the entrance of the principal's office. Seal suddenly had a bold idea, which would definitely annoy Old Deng to death. Of course, this year is forgot it, and Old Deng was still watching Harry. Under the circumstances, Seal still decided to keep a low profile this year, and don't play dead. If the Old Deng was not happy and something happened, Seal would probably regret it and die. After letting go of Loudang, Seal started to walk forward. During the period, he passed through many strange-looking classrooms and some dusty existences. Finally, Seal found himself in what seemed to be a dead end. The destination of this trip is seen in the corridor. A grimy-looking troll stick slaps the tapestry of Barnabas. Seal looked at the tapestry very happily, and saw that the images on the blanket would move. The stupid-looking wizard was being constantly beaten by trolls. Seal smiled and shook his head. The evil taste of the wizarding world is thoroughly implemented. After viewing the tapestries, Seal finally remembered to do business, so Seal began to keep thinking in his head, I want a huge room where I can practice magic, and then started walking back and forth in the corridor. When Seal walked back and forth 3 times, and was about to begin to wonder why the room of requirement didn't appear as in the book, the wall opposite the tapestry began to undulate continuously, and then formed a delicate-looking bronze inlay. Golden Gate. Seal finally let out a happy smile, pushed the door and walked in. One side of the room was filled with alchemy battle dolls with connection spells, and there were even a few books on defense against the dark arts on the bookshelf on the other side. There are many stools scattered in the room, and it is definitely a good place to connect. On the bookshelf in the aisle, Seal was a little curious. He carefully touched all the books with a dagger to make sure that there was no special magic, and then he picked up a book and started reading it. After roughly flipping through all the books on the bookshelf, Seal did not gain much. These books are not much different from the Defense Against the Dark Arts books in the library. I want to find books in the forbidden area from here. It's kind of whimsical. After roughly watching the room of requirement, Seal walked out of the room and watched the door change back to the original wall little by little in front of his eyes. Seal suddenly thought that a Horcrux of Earth demon was inside. Would you like to try to get that Horcrux as a bargaining chip in advance? Seal had some ideas. After all, it was a Ravenclaw holy relic. To be honest, Seal still had a lot of ideas. After Seal couldn't help but think of going out to take a look, reason immediately strangled Seal's actions. After Seal calmed down, he scared himself into a cold sweat. He couldn't be so swollen. He was as strong as old Deng and could be swayed by Voldemort. Whatever he sensed, Seal would never be able to eat and walk around. After dispelling his swelling, Seal turned around and started walking downstairs. Today is the weekend, and there are not many people who get up early. Seal has been strolling for a long time, and he is also a little hungry. So Shire decided to start today's dinner, a trip to the Hogwarts kitchen. Yo-Yo came to the basement where the kitchen was, and Seal began to look for the picture full of fruits. As time passed, Seal began to feel a little nervous. After all, the Sorting Hat said that Seal had no idea what the help was. The huge pair, and after hearing a guy after a laugh, the pair turned into a brass doorknob. When Seal opened the door, he saw countless busy house elves. They neatly stopped their lives and looked at Seal, who also looked at them with a confused expression. After I don't know who was the first to scream, the elf in the kitchen suddenly messed up. Several elves even knocked over the noodle bowls in their hands, and flour was scattered everywhere. Seal greeted a little embarrassedly. Finally, amidst the shoving of the elf, a daring-looking elf stood up. "Hello, sir, my name is Duoduo, what can I do for you?" Elf Duoduo rubbed his hands nervously, looking very nervous. Although I had long thought that the elf would have such a performance, but after seeing it, the performance of the elf was still a little bad for Seal. Hello, my name is Charles Lancaster, you can just call me Charles, I am a little hungry, can I have breakfast first? Somewhat uncertain, he came with a friendly purpose, but the excessive respect of the elves still caused some tension in the Seal. "Okay, sir, no problem." Duoduo looked very happy, and the elves around began to get busy, bringing a lot of omelets, bacon, milk bread and other breakfasts to Charles. Some elves even fought for Seal's breakfast, and finally more and more breakfasts were placed in front of Seal. "Enough is enough, can I eat here?" Seal was a little helpless. These little elves are good at everything, but they are a little too enthusiastic. "Of course, our honor." Duoduo bowed and answered respectfully. Seal, who had been hungry for a long time, was not polite. After politely expressing Duoduo what they should do, ignore him and start today's breakfast. After the wind and clouds were blown away, Seal stretched out on the chair with his stomach in his arms, thinking about the next plan.